We'll call the December 15th City Council meeting to order. Commissioner Banks, if you'll give us a prayer pledge and the fact of the day, please.
Let's bow for prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you again as we gather in this place. We ask for your wisdom again to do the business of the people. We ask for your direction and guidance and thoughtfulness. Lord, we remember the people in the Midwest who have suffered such tragedies. We just ask you to lift them up, strengthen them, all those who are rushing to respond. Father, may it be something that draws us together again as a nation. We ask all these things in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And the fact of the day, in September 1789, the first Congress of the United States approved 12 amendments to the U.S. Constitution and sent them to the states for ratification. The amendments were designed to protect the basic rights of U.S. citizens. On December 15, 1791, Virginia became the 10th of 14 states to approve 10 of the 12 amendments, thus giving the Bill of Rights the majority of state ratification necessary to make it legal.
Thank you. Okay, any additions, subtractions to the minutes of December 1st? If not, look for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Bankson.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Smith. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay. Need to read a proclamation for the city general election in 2022. Is it on here? Okay, whereas in accordance with the provisions of the charter and ordinances of the city of Apopka, Florida, an election shall be held on March 8th, 2022, at which election there shall be elected a mayor and a commissioner for seat 1 and a commissioner for seat 2. And whereas the terms of office of mayor, commissioner seat 1, and commissioner seat 2 will expire at 12 p.m. on April 26, 2022, it is therefore necessary that a mayor, a commissioner for seat 1, and a commissioner for seat 2 be elected at an election of the city of Apopka, Florida. Now, therefore, I, Brian Nelson, mayor of the city of Apopka, Florida, as required by law, do hereby proclaim and pronounce that an election will be held in the city of Apopka, Florida, on Tuesday, March 8, 2022, from 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. 104 is at the Apopka Community Center, VFW, 519 South Central Avenue, Apopka, Florida, and Precinct 9204, Northwest Recreational Complex, 3710 Jason Dwelly, Apopka, Florida. I, Brian Nelson, hereby appoint the canvassing board for said election as follows. Canvassing board, City Commissioner Doug Bankson, City Clerk Susan B. M. Bone, and City Resident Jim Green. In the event it becomes necessary to have a runoff election, this will be held on Tuesday, April 12th, 2022, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at Precinct 9104, Apopka Community Center, 519 South Central Avenue, Apopka, Florida, and Precinct 924, Northwest Recreational, 3710 Jason Dwelly, Apopka, Florida. In witness hereof, I undo set my hand and cause the seal of the city of Apopka, Florida, to be affixed and attested by the city clerk of Apopka this 15th day of December 2021. That's the proclamation. So, okay. First up, we've got presentation by the Foliage Sertoma Club, Lorena Potter. And we got a couple of members. Amy, yes. Thank you. Got some awards to give out.
Okay, so first of all, I would like to thank the City of Apopka for their co-sponsorship of the Christmas parade. We wouldn't be able to do it without our elected officials, our streets and grounds, our recreation, from the police and fire. It's definitely a group effort, and we really appreciate all of your help. And this year, I don't know how many of you came to the parade, but it was such a relief to have a normal parade after COVID last year, and We had 83 entries and an hour and a half parade, and it was wonderful. So I hope everybody enjoyed it. First up, we'd like to announce our best band, and that goes to Apopka High School Blue Darter Marching Band, and the band director is Jeremy Langford, coming for the award.
Well, the whole group, okay.
Okay, next, I don't know, again, how many of you went to the parade, but if you saw Turning Point, they had an impressive entry. I think they took up a whole city block. So Turning Point could have won many different awards, but they scored highest on Most Creative. So for Most Creative goes to Turning Point. And they're doing some performances this week, so accepting the award is Derek Grimsley, and in the parade, he was in the Rudolph costume. Okay, next is Best Marching and Performing, and that is for Rosie O'Grady's Highlanders. And accepting is Jim Nisbet. Best Float goes to Advent Health, and accepting that award is Renee Rose. And our theme this year was Rejoice. It's Christmas in Apopka. And our best of theme goes to Trinity Christian School. They had the float with the Kitland Nelson Park gazebo on it. So accepting that award is Beverly Lanine and Edith Bentley. And last but not least, we have our special recognition, and that goes to the Axe Place. And I'm sorry, I don't know the gentleman's name who just came in. Jim? What's the Axe Hole. All right, do you want to get a photo?
Sure. Well, as Commissioner Smith and I are both members of Sertoma, I tell you, I know that we've started back, in March, April, started working on the parade, and so a lot of hard work goes behind the scenes to make that happen. So thank you. Thank the Sertoma Club for all that you do to make that happen. Yep, it was a great event. One of the best ever. Okay. The City Pavement Improvement Program. So we're streaming live, or how we handling? Rob, we got this one all figured out?
So, good evening, Mayor and Commissioner. My name is David.
Talk into the mic.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Commissioner. My name is David Adbudu, Public Service Director. As you're aware, this board on May the 19th, 2021, approved Infrastructure Management Service, IMS, to perform an assessment of the city roadway pavement condition. David Brayton, the project manager from IMS, will be providing us a synopsis of their assessment, and finding, and this will be done via Zoom. At the end of David's presentation, I will be returning to the podium to present our proposed pavement improvement schedule for this fiscal year as well as next fiscal year. So I will ask David to commence his Zoom presentation now.
Hello, everyone. Is my audio coming through clear?
Yes.
Thank you for having me. Excuse me. Thank you for having me this evening. As mentioned, my name is Dave Bratton with IMS, and we recently completed a pavement management program with the city. Tonight, I'm just going to kind of run through the basics of what we did, the why, the how, and just try to give an overview of the project as a whole so that you can kind of see what went on and what our outcomes were. I'd like to briefly just go over what is pavement condition, a little bit about what the pavement management process is, why we do it, what its benefits are, run through what we did for the actual survey, what we found, so as far as conditions and what that looks like for roads within your city, and then just run through a brief explanation of how the budget analysis came together and what we're seeing as far as future projections. With that, I will jump into what a pavement condition is. Throughout the presentation, you'll see probably the acronym PCI come up several times, and it stands for Pavement Condition Index. And it's basically a conglomerate of distress types, distress quantity, and distress severity. So distress types are going to be potholes, cracking, things you see on the surface of the pavement. We then quantify those distresses, so whether it be a count, an area measure, a linear foot measure, and then we take the severity of that distress, whether it be a small crack or a large crack. And that's all rolled into, again, an ASTM standard calculation, and we put out a condition index from 0 to 100. 100 being the best condition you can get, basically a brand new road, it has no defects. 0 being a road that's completely failed, it's beyond the point where any sort of smaller, maybe less expensive rehabilitations are going to be effective. It's basically as back to almost gravel as you can get. And then we also roll in a ride score just to kind of blend what people would feel as they're driving down the road into this overall score. So how this looks for the city's roads are, it's actually a really good network. We see an overall pavement condition of 77. Very few agencies we see get over a PCI of 80, so that puts you guys kind of at the top of the range as far as agency networks are concerned. See a backlog of 1%, and that backlog represents the streets below a PCI 40, generally the streets that you're going to have to do pretty extensive, if not full, reconstruction on. The distributions, too, are very good. You have 37% of your streets over a PCI of 85 and 31% within the 70 to 85 range. Again, so as far as an overall network goes, you guys are actually in very good shape. With that, I'll move on to the management process. So pavement management is basically the process of assessing streets and putting together a plan to best use the funds available. Benefit here is that you can try and do cheaper rehabs on streets in better condition to keep them in better condition longer. If we look at the graph here, you can see 3 basic zones. We've got the red zone down at the bottom. Those are going to be your most expensive rehabs, your streets that are in the worst shape. The idea here is to keep doing small rehabs to keep those streets in good shape. And then you can see the blue solid line here. That's the kind of the represented deterioration of a pavement. So the blue line keeps coming, and then we get to a point here in the green zone where if we left the street as is, it would continue to deteriorate a little bit faster and then down into the yellow and red zones, which are more expensive. But if we do a small rehab, maybe crack seal or a surface treatment, which restores the surface of the road for a relatively low price, we can kind of start that process over, have slower deterioration, and then again at some point down in the pavement's life, do another rehabilitation. So what that looks like as far as percentages of a pavement's life, the beginning where you're seeing a brand new road, it actually deteriorates relatively slow because it's still structurally adequate. Cracks haven't formed to allow water in. It hasn't seen those repeated traffic loads. So you're actually able to get approximately only a 15% drop in quality over 40% of the pavement's expected life. Whereas if you get past a certain point where pavements start to deteriorate a little bit faster, you actually see that rate increase. So you can see an additional 40% drop in quality over just another 15% of the pavement's life. When we look at that as far as how costs are applied, you can see the average condition for most of your streets is going to be a 77. So well within that range where rehabs are cheaper, you can maybe do something $4 to $6 a square yard, even less if it's a higher PCI. But once you get down into a certain range, it starts to deteriorate quicker and the rehabs get more and more expensive. So this is kind of the basic driving factor behind the process. And it's actually an iterative process. So what we did is we came in and initially talked with the city, what are your basic objectives? Where do we want to test? What do we want to find out about the roads? We went out, collected conditions, so now we have an understanding. We know where the good roads are, the bad roads are, and just what shape they are. From there, we talked again with the city, and we were able to put together certain priorities, figure out what we wanted to do, rehab types. We ran some budgets, put out a report, and then that comes back to the city and allows them to make better decisions or more informed decisions going forward. Then sometime in the future, the process starts over where, based on the previous findings, there's new objectives. We come out, reassess, and do the whole process through reporting and analysis again. Now, the survey itself, it uses a van that has, we call them LCMS vans. It's laser crack measurement system. There's two very accurate lasers on the back of the vehicle, and they're running down the pavement, collecting detailed information down to millimeter accuracy about the profile of the road. This is how we're collecting all of our cracking, our patching, potholes, our ride data for incorporating that into PCI. And it's really going to measure things that you see daily as you drive down the street. So we have things like graveling, where there's a bit of a loss of material on the pavement surface. It's not quite to where a pothole is. This is really just a defect in the pavement itself, the material that was used that allows it to pop up. Bleeding, you've probably seen this, big black stripes down the road. It's really, again, another defect of the pavement material where there's too much asphalt emulsion within the mix and it actually rises to the top. This can actually cause issues in wet climates because that binder material on the surface, it creates a slick, smooth area where you can have reduced skid friction, and that can lead to accidents. Use pavements to stop. You want to be able to stop. Longitudinal and transverse cracks. Those are things that everyone's used to seeing. They're small, they're large, but that's generally just a function of the pavement aging. See things like alligator cracking, and it looks like its name, scales on the back of an alligator. This distress is going to represent a failed pavement. So through repeated traffic loading, the pavement is going to deflect more and more, and over time, that deflection actually causes little cracks to turn into big cracks and the pieces of the road to break apart. At this point, the road's really not handling traffic loads well anymore, and that portion of the street needs to be replaced. Something similar can happen near the edge of the pavement where you either have erosion or a large drop-off with traffic loading on the edge of pavement. You can see cracking there, and the pavement starts to kind of break up and fall away from the side of the road. There's things like wheel path rutting. This is generally where you're seeing heavy trucks. They're actually so heavy that as they repeatedly drive over a stretch of road or are braking at intersections, you see the pavement start to deform and actually create grooves within the surface. So over the life cycle of the pavement, again, we start at PCI 100 and work our way down. As we go down, the rehab techniques that we would want to use are going from simple things like crack seals, slurry seals at the top of the range, which are very cheap. They're very quick to put down. Once you get into the 60, 70 range for PCIs, that's where things start to go from those light surface treatments to overlays where you're actually milling off part of the pavement and coming back and replacing it. Down through the 50s and 60s, it's possibly thicker overlays, you're milling deeper, or you're patching all the way to the base of the pavement. And then once you get down to PCI 40, that's really where roads start to look failed. You may need to do the whole pavement surface over again, mill it all out, relay it, or reconstruct the road fully down through the base layer down to native soils. We've got some images of what that looks like within the city. Here is a PCI 97 Bonsai Street. This is basically a new road, or what would be considered new. Probably only a few years old. You can see that it's still black. There's no cracks on the top, or very few. This is something that maybe in a couple of years may need a little bit of maintenance, crack seal, something like that. From here down, it's only minor amounts of cracking that you usually see. PCI 97 to 92 would be potentially hard to distinguish. Even down into the 80s, it gets a little bit more difficult. The next street here we can see is a 62, and this is about the point where those surface treatments really start to lose their effectiveness. You can see quite a bit of longitudinal cracking here. It hasn't got to the point where the pavement's failed yet, but it's more than a crack seal job can take care of. It's so numerous that the cost would be so high. Doing a surface treatment helps basically rejuvenate the surface for several years. Moving down to PCI 55, we can see a lot more cracking here. It's interconnected. At this point, any sort of surface treatment would have cracks developing in it within a year or two, and you'd basically be back to where you were. So from here on down, it's either a partial or full replacement of the pavement surface. You see a PCI of 43 next on Red Oak Court. Maybe a little hard to see in the images here, but we've got some alligator cracking closer to the intersection. The crack widths are very large here on this residential street. So this is still something that could be saved with an overlay, but it may need different areas of patching for maybe the alligator cracking. Then at the lower end of the scale, we have a PCI of 27 here. You can see there's been some patching to fix areas. There's some patching along the edge of the pavement. There's a little chunk missing. We would expect to see alligatoring up and down this pavement. So there may be some life left in the base, but you'd have to do a little bit more design investigation to see whether or not this is maybe something that could be overlaid or may need a full reconstruction. The fortunate thing here is your conditions and their distribution. Again, PCI 77, backlog of roughly 1%. Most of your streets are over a PCI of 50. There's really nothing 50 and below, 3% or so. So this is going to allow you to focus on those surface treatments and those overlays, which keep the pavements in better shape or in good shape longer for less money than reconstructing the entire network or the entire segment of the street. Now, once we've collected this data and we know where our poor areas are, where our good areas are, how much of those different distributions we have, we can go on and start creating a budget analysis to figure out what we need to spend, where we need to spend it. We look at this in kind of 3 different steps. So we're going to have a kind of a fact-finding stage where we figure out what you've got, what you may need. We're going to look at current rehab techniques. So what are you guys doing? What does it cost? Are there any areas that we need to know about as far as maybe additional planning needs? It's going to be more expensive in this part of town. Are there any projects you already have planned so that when we do run a budget, we're planning in work that's already going to go forward in the correct year? We're looking at things we may want to bring into the network. So do we want to have more surface treatments, different types of surface treatments, and then areas of higher priority. So maybe those thoroughfares where you're seeing more traffic, more people use it, we want to put our funds there so that a greater amount of traffic is getting to see the improvements that we're doing. Step two, we take all of these ideas that we've come up with or these needs that we've addressed or identified, and we plug them into an analysis program. IMF has its own spreadsheet-based one that we've supplied to the city, but it basically allows you to deteriorate pavements moving forward so that you can forecast into the future. It lets us bring in these cost models that we've developed or borrowed, bring in those planned projects again. We can set those priorities, and it lets us go kind of one step beyond just looking at each individual segment. We're able to put 3, 4, 5 roads together in an area, say a neighborhood or a few blocks downtown, and treat them as one project so that there's not individual planning that needs to go block by block. It gives you kind of a leg up on the next step of meeting internally and seeing where we actually want to do work. Once that's complete and we have some running models, we'll do some budget scenarios based on goals that we may want to set, funding that we know we have, and then we'll put out a 5-year analysis plan to say this dollar amount gets us at this point in the future. The rehab costs themselves, the city wanted to get into those surface treatments a little bit more, start implementing those, start looking at what those may do as far as improving the network. So we were able to borrow some of the information, I think it was from Lakeland. I know they're a few hours away, but as far as Central Florida costing, they're what we had as far as the most up-to-date in the area. So we were able to adopt that for your program and do some budget estimates based on that. But again, we see up at the top of the list there, just routine maintenance, which is basically, hey, crack seal here and there. It's a little hard to do within a large program like this, but it's up there as a placeholder just so you know that those streets still do need attention beyond what we're able to output here. We've added a rejuvenator, which is basically a spray seal, a spray additive for a pavement to basically keep oxidation to a minimum. That's going to help your cracks develop at a later date. It's going to keep the pavement surface flexible and slow deterioration. We've included some micro-surfacing options, which are asphalt emulsion with a very fine aggregate in it. While it doesn't really add a structural dimension to the road, it helps with wearing and weatherproofing. And then a cape seal there, it's usually a larger aggregate size with either a slurry or a micro seal over it to keep pavement smooth, and it looks nice to citizens. The cape seal actually does a little bit better job as well when it comes to minimizing reflective cracks that may be on the pavement, so those generally last a little bit longer, and that's why we put it a little bit further down the list for worse roads. From there, we're looking at possibly different types of overlays as far as thickness and maybe additional patching that's needed. And then down at the very bottom, we're looking at those full reconstructs for roads that have completely failed. They're going to be the most expensive option. Fortunately, there's very few roads within the city that require that, so we can focus a little bit more on the overlays and the surface treatment. We have various model outruns or outputs. Here we're going to see kind of a stratification of what you can achieve over a 5-year period with the top of the range. If we were to have a whole bunch of money, about $2.5 million, we'd be looking at a final PCI for the network at an 84. That would be above and beyond what most agencies go for. You'd be in fantastic shape moving forward. Backlog would be 0. At the bottom of the scale here, we have the current projected budget. It's variable over the year, so it's not a constant 2 million, 1 million, $500,000, 150,000. It averages about 950,000 per year. That's going to hold the city at a PCI of 75, which is still good. and it allows the backlog to grow a little bit to 2%. Next slide shows this same data, but it relates it on a trend line where we can compare PCI and the budget. So if you look anywhere along this line, you can kind of trace over to the PCI. Say we want a PCI 70, and we can move down to the budget scenario area, and we'd be at maybe tick marks 175,000, 200,000. We can move up the scale. PCI 80 on the left side, move over to the blue line, and then transfer down, and we're at maybe a budget of 1.7 million. We're looking at where we are currently within the program, just because of how the projects are formulated and priorities go. You're not always able to hit exact PCIs. We were able to give a PCI of 78, which would be a slight increase at about 1.47 million. We would see a tiny decrease to a 76 at about 1.2 million. So somewhere in there would be kind of the steady state at 77 if you wanted to maintain just surface condition. Average at 77 would probably be in the 1.325 million ballpark. Again, that doesn't take into excuse me. That doesn't take into consideration backlog growth. We might see a slight increase to 2% still within that budget range. Looking at our current projections with $950,000 approximately per year, we're going to see a slight increase in the very good category. That's going to be some of the surface treatments we've done. You see a little decrease in the excellent category. That's just, we're not able to necessarily keep up with all deterioration, but you will see a decrease in the fair and good categories, and that's those overlays and surface treatments that we've done that haven't been able to deteriorate down to those pavements moved up into the better categories. Unfortunately, there is a larger growth in the 40 to 50 range, and that's just haven't been able to maintain with current funds. It's not an unovercomable increase, but something that down the line would represent a larger cost to the city. So with that, we can make a couple basic recommendations. So where you're at right now, we would recommend the city not go any further down in condition past the 75 or with a larger backlog of 5%. Your current budget does still meet that goal, so you're going to be hitting or are projected to hit 75 in 5 years with a backlog of 2%. If we drop even a little bit lower in budget, say roughly 800,000 per year, we will see the PCI drop a little bit lower down to a 74, and see the backlog still at around 2%. We also recommend that rehab strategies, your estimated costs for any work you're doing, be reviewed and updated annually. If you see drastic increases or drastic decreases in pricing, that can drastically change the outcomes of the models. So we're looking at a 5-year period. Even 10% change in costs can move you up or down the scale quite a bit. Within the sheet that's been supplied to the city, it's possible to go in, make those changes, rerun the scenarios, and see where you'll be with the updated information. We also recommend proactive maintenance. If you can spend the money, spend the money. As we saw in one of the very beginning slides, $1 of preventive maintenance saves you, $5, $10 in rehabilitation down the line. And then we also recommend periodic resurveys just to track deterioration, make sure that all of our models are using data that's up to date. Most agencies do that on a 3 to 5 year period, but it just depends on your needs. Then with that, I will open it up to any questions.
Okay, questions? Commissioner Becker?
Yeah. Hey, this is Commissioner Becker. So on Slide 34 and, well, actually, let me go to slide 52. It's the impact of funding levels on PCI. It's your kind of 5-year horizon. Slide before that. There you go. So on the recommendation slide, I just want to make sure I'm reading this correctly. So on the recommendation slide, it would recommend a budget of $950,000 a year. But if I look at that trend line, we're going from a spot of condition of 77 average now to a condition of 75. So we're actually getting worse. Why would we recommend a budget of 950 to get worse in terms of overall network quality?
The 950 is what we're projected to see spent over the next 5 years. We actually had kind of a top of the range decreased backlog recommendation at 2.5 million. There's 2 green lines on there. One is dotted, one's solid. The very top line would be the kind of the most top end recommendation at about 2.5 million. To keep things where they are and prevent any sort of overall network deterioration, based on these models, you'd probably be in the $1.3 million range.
Okay, I'm just trying to reconcile to that last slide because on the Apopka recommendations, maybe this is a staff question, but it says Apopka recommendations, slide 55, budget scenarios, annual 5-year budget 950 achieves PCI 75, 800 achieves PCI 74.
Oh.
I'm reading that as a recommended action of this council. Is that incorrect?
That would be the kind of the minimum recommendation based on where you guys are currently with funding. It's more of what's currently achievable based on what you guys have. If there are additional funds available, we definitely recommend trying to keep PCIs where they are at or higher. But
So,
given
so 950 doesn't seem realistic. So I find it telling because like on slide 34, where we talk about the benefits of pavement management, the green section where it's $4 to $6 a square yard in terms of that condition of a roadway to kind of be proactive in keeping up the roadway condition. It's kind of interesting when you compare it to slide 40, where you're going over the understanding the pavement condition index, where you're kind of rating it excellent, very good, good, fair, because everything above 70 is very good and excellent, but really you go all the way down to 50 for us to kind of think that it's in fair condition, yet the cost to stay ahead of it is 5 to 6 times the cost of keeping it above the 70 mark. So I just, as a city, you have 75 as a target, but I guess this is going to be more of a staff question of whether or not we think 950 is realistic for our roadway system. But on 53, where we talk about the funding levels on PCI, so if I understand this correctly, each one of these lines, it says final PCI equals, and then it's got a number. That's the target that we would stand to achieve if we invested the dollars that are in the annual budget indicated on that line. Is that correct?
Those are the projections from the program, yes.
Right.
So final PCI with that dollar amount per year is where we would expect conditions to land.
And then the backlog percentage would be, since we are limiting the budget, you would have a realistic backlog of roadways that you can achieve with the amount that we put on an annual basis, correct? That's what the backlog is meaning to tell?
Backlog are roads below a PCI 40 that usually need partial or full reconstruction. They're the most expensive ones. Generally, the backlog is roads that weren't able to be maintained through a cheaper rehabilitation technique.
So definitionally, sorry, I'm picky on the details. So definitionally, the backlog would be pavement condition under 40. Is that what you said?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And in that case, it's almost even a higher multiple to get that roadway. So you're carrying high cost burden for the roadways that you need to satisfy if you keep that backlog high. Okay.
The assumption.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say the assumption is that you're maintaining a lot of other better condition streets as you're allocating some funds to the backlog. So it could be that you say, we're going to go and spend X amount of dollars to do everything PCI 40 and below in year one, and then try and maintain everything. There's there's definitely different ways to prioritize this. This is basically just the bare logic of the program.
Gotcha. Okay. And then in your analysis, and this is kind of a random question, but do you factor in kind of way vehicles are constructed these days? You know, obviously with the adoption of electric vehicles, there are much heavier vehicles over time, and as those become more adopted and more people drive those, do you factor that into the analysis that you have over the 5-year period?
It is possible to do with structural testing, but this analysis didn't factor that in. Passenger vehicles are definitely less destructive than multi-axle vehicles, semis, garbage trucks, things like that. So with a slight increase in weights for like the batteries, things like that, it's a minimal increase over, say, having an extra garbage truck route come through town.
Okay. And then this data is as of 9/15/2021, is that correct? Is that your analysis date?
That's when we ran the budget scenarios. The survey itself, when we ran the actual network to collect conditions, was end of July this year. So very little deterioration would be expected between the time the van was there and when these budget scenarios were run. But there is an accounting for that within the inflation.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Smith?
My question is, do you have a number as to what it would cost to maintain the PCI 77 that we currently have with the backlog of 2%?
We would expect it to be, right between the $78 and $76 amount, most likely about $1.325 million.
That's it.
You good? Commissioner Bankson?
Appreciate this analysis because it gives just the ability to project for the future on a consistent basis. I lean towards proactive. You know, as Commissioner Becker said, we need to get it up to a standard and keep it there, or it costs us more in the long run. So if we have to spend more initially to get it there, it's worth it in the long run. And to me, after safety is infrastructure. I think that's where we need to, from that city level, focus on those things because it's what we build on. It's what our businesses build on. It's what attracts things to the city. So I want us to tend towards that side, definitely not to lose ground, but I think we need to gain some ground and set that as a noble goal.
Commissioner Velasquez?
I agree with, basically, if we can keep what we have, which is the 77, and to invest more in the road resurfacing. The only thing I'm asking is, do we have a list of the streets? I mean, he
That's
has
coming
this
up next.
presentation.
That's coming up next.
It's coming up next.
Okay, that's what I wanted to see.
Yeah, I just wanted to, David, thank you, for the work y'all have done. I just want to make sure everybody in the audience
Oh,
knows.
there it is, yeah, I see it.
Have I influenced your analysis here at all? Have I made any recommendations on your analysis or not?
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
I just want everybody in the audience to know that I haven't had any influence on the recommendations in front of you. I haven't made any call, I hadn't talked to you, I hadn't called you, hadn't had conversations with you about this report.
No, this is a totally separate process, and we generally try to avoid any sort of skewed results in that manner.
Awesome, thank you. Appreciate it, Dave. Thanks for all your work on this report. We appreciate you.
I have one more question before you leave. I asked about maintaining the 77 PCI at 2%, but currently it says that we have a 77 with a 0.9%. So what would be the difference in the cost to maintain the 0.9 instead of the 2?
These projections, we'd have to kind of tweak the parameters which we set. So it prioritizes different roads differently. We went and prioritized arterial roads above locals and collectors. I'd have to do a little bit of digging to see where the poor condition streets are. It may be that they're very low traveled local roads that didn't have a high enough priority to be selected within the program. I mean, if you're really interested in getting an output for that, we could generate a separate budget that addresses those additional backlog streets to bring them down lower, planning in work on the worst condition streets, and then kind of building a what if based on that scenario that's kind of outside the parameters which these.
Thank-
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up, Dio, and I hope you're going to give a little, your background. I know you've been on the job for what, 3 months now? Almost.
6 weeks.
Yeah, and kind of your background, because I think, and this is definitely in your wheelhouse, but if you can kind of give us your background before you kind of start on your recommended pavement improvements, please, sir.
Right, I have been involved with road construction with the county. I've been there for 30 years prior to joining here, so I've done a lot of these type of road construction by contractors. So we are familiar with all the processes, right, that is listed in the report. And I also have working knowledge about the type of, and the choices of these roads for proactivity. And I liked some of the questions that most of you asked, because in terms of preservation or treatment of roads, it's better to be proactive and fix the road structurally now and it lasts longer than to prolong it. And the county, in our case there, we always use the mill and overlay more, it extends the road longer. We used to use the microsurfacing, and it did help in 2008, I think, right? It's when the recession is. But we went back and fixed all those road back for the next 5 years, because you have to get a lot of funding, for that in mill and overlay. So what the county does right now, and if you look at all the county roads, a very structurally sound road, is that they carry through a program of mill and overlay. And when roads, and we have some worse roads too, and what we do is partial reconstruction, like in the one of Yada Road, which you have here. That's why it's so expensive to fix that road, because not only the pavement is broad, the base is also compromised. And when you have the base is compromised, you have to then fix the entire structure, or else you can have a road without the structural integrity for traffic loading. So with that, with the study that was done by IMS, we went through a list of roads based on their recommendation, and we provided them independently to vet those roads, depend on the recommendation that they have provided to us. So before I go through those slides I just wanted to reiterate some of those pavement terminology so you will see on those slides. You're going to see some of those roads I have there as mill and overlay. And what that means is the process involved is to remove the existing pavement, correct any base deficiency, like you have in some depression area, level that area and overlay with new structural pavement. The reason that you have to do that, because the pavement itself, right, had lost all its levels of service, its life, and you have to replace it. If you don't, then basically water infiltration, everything is going to damage the base. It'd be expensive to reconstruct. So we have selected a certain type of road, and according to the pavement condition analysis, they fall below a range from his study, 50 and lower down. We also have roads that is suggested in the study for Cape Seal and microsurfacing. Now, those roads, the pavement conditions, right, is not compromised, but you can go ahead and use those treatment service, and you can prolong those roads for another 5 to 7 years, so that you can spend some of your money on those road that is really compromised. So you can still extend and keep those for the 5 to 7 years. So the process was Cape Seal that was discussed there. And this is a surface treatment in which the existing pavement is sprayed with an asphaltic emulsion. It's followed by an application of an aggregate chip. It's being rolled into place, and a filing sealing coat is placed on top of it. It's a very thin layer. It's about less than about a quarter of inch, or half the quarter inch. The other stuff is a microsurface, and these are treatment. These have no structural stuff, but they are able to preserve the pavement and give you 5 to 7 years. It enables you to stretch your money out, right, and get those wash roads done in time. And this is also a surface treatment where a mixture of asphaltic emulsion, aggregate water, and other additive, which is Portland cement, is spread over the existing pavement. Again, it's a preservation, it seals the crack, it enables a rideable surface, but it preserves and the pavement are going to last for 5 to 7 years longer. And it's able to prevent the compromise of the base. We have the one, for example, Yada Road, which was discussed here, and I will show the slide here. This road needs a coal-in-place well recycling process. This is a special process. It's a special type of equipment. And what it does, it's really a set of machines that involve with 100% recycling the existing asphalt and at least 4 inches of the base. It mixes it with some aggregate and stabilizing agent and replace it back as a base material. And once that is done, it's all in one process. And after that is done, and we have used it well in the county a lot. We roll the surface, we then put a sand seal coat, and we leave it to cure in place for about 4 to 5 days, right? At that time, and the road is not closed, you can still drive on the road. Once the density in the curing period is done, we check the density, and then an asphaltic surface is placed over the road. So that process is a very expensive process. That's the reason why in the previous workshop, you heard that the number is around $800,000 to $1 million for that. We had a contractor who went out there who worked for the county, who had done a lot of work for the county and Sumter County in many places. We called him here. He did some coring. He looked at the road condition. He sent the report in. It's similar to what we have constructed in the county in a similar state of road. And that was his recommendation as well. And that recommendation was supported by the IMS team as well. So with that explanation, some of the road that you see that we selected here came from the study itself. In places, we tried to distribute these roads, not in one area, but throughout the city in order to make sure that, we distribute all this, so spread the money around in terms of the roadway. And the second thing that we have done here, right, is to see areas like in a subdivision where we can, integrate a few of these roads, right, as grouping. So we can only get in the subdivision one time and fix all those roads. And it's for ease of construction and ease of paying to the citizen as well, rather than do piecemeal of road there. So that's, you will see some of these slides that I'm going through it here.
And while you're doing that, just so we can have the right frame of reference, so the roads that you're about to show us, they were the recommendation of IMS?
Yeah. It is from the study.
And when they made their recommendation, was that solely based off of pavement condition, or was that also prioritized along with like daily vehicle counts, things like that?
No, we have not used the vehicle counts there because we had a set of that, but we have not used that. We went back on the road and used the field experience and conditions and based on the coring that was received for Yada Road. So the first road we have a familiar overlay is Armando Borjas. It's from Apopka Boulevard, it's shown in the blue there, as one. The next one is Cleveland Street, which from West Orange Trail to Sheila Avenue. It was discussed in the presentation. From David. Following the Errol Estate, you can see all those roads around there, which was Errol Parkway from Lake Francis Drive to Old Dixie, Lexington Parkway from Errol Parkway to Parkside Boulevard, Lexington Parkway, it's that small circle around there, and Old Dixie Highway. So these are all for the mill and overlay. I'm going to continue. You have Roger Road, and it's shown from Leicester to the end. We have the Royal Estate, and this was a part of the presentation that was just finished, and those are the three cul-de-sac, Red Oak, oakwood cord, pine, and maple cord. This was just a repeat of the maple is a slide that shouldn't have been there. In the downtown area, we have 5th Street from Forest Avenue to Station Street, Forest Avenue from Main Street to 8th Street, and 8th Street from Alabama to Hayton Avenue. Let me go back here because I think I made a mistake here. This road here that I'm recommending here is for Cape Seal and microsurface, for treatment. The previous road I said for mill and overlay, right? I described the mill and overlay as you remove the pavement, right? And you replace them with new surface. This here is treatment. That is the existing pavement is really degraded, but is structurally sound still. So we are going to apply either Cape Seal or microsurfacing to preserve that pavement to get it to the last 5 to 7 years more, as recommended from the study itself. So those are the streets for the downtown area. We have Houghton Oak Subdivision and North Washington Avenue, and those are all the streets that you see in orange. That is going to have those treatment as well. We have Pine Over Kiver, you have Falcon Crest Boulevard, Falcon Wood Court, Knightwood Drive, and Chapelwood Drive. They're all listed well in orange. And now we're getting ready future funding for Yaza Road. As you know, I described here, and I think David have suggested this road have a PCI, I think is below 40. I think he mentioned, which means that the road base is also compromised as well as the surface. So this is the process I describe as cool in place, right? It's a process of recycling the existing pavement. The estimate cost is around $800K to $1 million. We do not have a contractor on board yet. This was estimated based on the experience and looking at some of the county costs because this is a specialized treatment. Once we have a contractor on board, right, and the cost could be slightly lower or up to $1 million, it depends on the cost of that contract. So this is the entire road that we are going to do. It's from US 441 to Joshua Lane. And if you see, this is the wash road in the city of Apopka right now. They have a lot of, and the pavement is gone, and you have a lot of base issue as well. Now for fiscal year 22-23, which is the next fiscal year, these are the roads that we have planned from the report itself. And those was Marshall Lake from South Broadchurch to the end, 2nd Avenue, and Central Avenue. And those are in blue, as you can see, show up on the map there. It's as a representation. We also have for the mill and overlay, we have the 9th Street and McGee Street from Alabama to the 10th Street. We have for the Meadow Oak subdivision, the entire street in that subdivision, we have for mill and overlay. Now, for the recommendation of these subdivisions that we are going to list here, these are for treatment, Cape Seal, or microsurfacing. So we have the schedule for Wakaiba Park subdivision, all those streets within that subdivision as listed. We have Little Avenue on 9th Street to 10th Street is also for that treatment of Cape Seal or microsurfacing. And further, we have Myrtle Street and Central Avenue is also recommended for that treatment in fiscal year 22-23. And those were all the for the 2-year plan that based on the report that we have scheduled. Now, these roads was visited by staff. So although the report recommend them, we had asked IMS to vet it. We still went back on the road and make sure that these treatment that we have specified here is the right treatment. Because as a result, I may come to this board and say, look, I may recommend, for example, a microsurfacing. But when we visit the site, that the pavement structure is compromised more, and to be better in the proactive way, it may be most cost benefit for us to do mill and overlay. So it's something that we be changing in time. So I just want to put that out here.
Okay. All right, questions? Commissioner Velasquez?
No, you answered my questions. I wanted the streets that they were going to start with. And, but if we see that there is another street that is not on the list, do we have a budget to kind of add them to the list or requests for them to be,
I think we want to be objective, and I mean, and I'll, Dio, this was, as I went with David, I didn't have anything to do with your recommendations, right? This was all Dio and-
This was solely my recommendation and staff, based on the report and based on my selective visits to some of these roads and the costs. Now, answering your question, I think if you have a suggested road, if you can let me know, it doesn't mean I will look at the funding, but it's not something I'm going to put there except, how the funding, because what I did here, we look at the existing amount of dollars we have now.
right?
And what I did was to come up with a cost estimate on what it would take to do this road with the existing funding. Now, we don't have contractor who can perform the mill and overlay, neither does the cooling place. So those number was taken from a regional database that I review. When we get the contractor on board, maybe those costs can be lower or higher. I don't know. So I wouldn't mind if you send me those roads to be kept into my spreadsheet, but I wouldn't promise you that I would have the funding and anything to do it if possible. And we are in the neighborhood, and that was one that we missed. And if there is a case that the funding well allows it, I will discuss it with the county administrator and you again to see if it's possible to do so.
But we want to be objective about it. We can't just,
No.
pick a neighborhood because you got 4 people screaming in the next neighborhood.
Right,
The
that's
road
correct.
is
No, I'm not-
on a higher,
Yeah.
That's correct.
yeah.
There's
so-
just some roads even to go to those neighborhoods where it's not listed here, but I feel should have some, should be looked at. But, you answered my question.
Commissioner Bankson?
Yeah, you hit my keyword, objective. I think that's the right way to look at it, and it keeps it from becoming an argument between neighborhoods. And this doesn't preclude us from small repairs, such as a potholes appeared. We can still fix those,
Yeah.
while these are more major projects.
That's
I
correct.
think the others is real key, just because of the area of growth and what's happening there. So I'm pleased to see that on the list, and it's a pretty bad road.
Yeah, that's
You go
correct.
through it, but I'm pleased too that along with the analysis, it seems to be evenly spread throughout the city, so.
And glad you brought that up, because, we did fund in this budget year a hot infrared heater. Right now, we're doing all cold patches, which are
They
not
don't
very
have some,
effective and
no.
are not very good. And we think, where's there he is in the back. So we think we'll have it before the end of the year?
Yes, sir,
Okay.
they told me that we'll have it either end of this year, beginning of next year.
So anyway, we'll have a machine that will do a much better job of patching the holes and spots that
Yeah,
we've
'cause
had.
that's,
Yeah.
so I'm referring to like the road from Leicester to Ponkin. That road is always full of potholes.
So hopefully we'll have a machine that'll do a much better job with that. Commissioner Smith?
The roads that you have listed here for the 21-22 that you recommended that were paved excluding Yoder Road, we'll be able to do for the 950,000? Is that what you're saying? Somewhere there's about?
Right, well, I think the budget amount was $1 million and plus, I think.
1.8, Commissioner. If you
1.8.
remember, we allocated an additional $1 million from the rescue plan money. So he's working with $1.8 million on these for this year,
All right, so 1.8 for this year,
Plus Yothers.
plus Yoder.
plus the $1 million that, with the Yother, so you have
Okay.
2.8 total.
All right.
First, I'd like to say, I hope that it's not going to be commonplace over the next few months that we have to put our service providers in a position where they have to testify that they haven't been subject to undue influence. I think that's very unprofessional. Secondly, I would hope that you would have some sort of collaboration or feedback to provide Deodat. You're his boss. So if that interaction hasn't occurred, I think it should. In terms of assessing our roadways, obviously we hired IMS to do this analysis for us. On an ongoing model, how are you and your staff going to be able to do this without the aid of IMS, or are you going to be able to? Do we have to always have constant engagement with the service provider to give us grading on our roadways? Or do you have the expertise to go out and say, okay, this road's a 75, this one's an 85, this one's a 32? How does that look like on a go-forward basis?
Well, one of the best planning tool, as what was recommended by David, is that every 3 years you should have this model to be rerun. But put that aside, the study itself is a good basis for us. One, it gives an inventory. It gives you a baseline of the condition of the road. And none of those road baseline that you can even use as what the report said. You have to visit these roads. And after you visit these roads, the condition of the pavement distress changes. You will see base failure, and you will make that determination. So in answering to your question, that we are not basing solely on the model. The model gives us a baseline, but it is going to base on our staff experience. I myself will be going out there. We also will get some input from the contractors, and those will all be in combination, right, to decide what is the best mechanism for us to fix that road.
So, great. And then from our own expectation, and again, it was a little eye-opening to me when we said that the analysis was done in July, the budget proposal was in September. So to me, that's a 2-month swing, whereas I felt like we were waiting for a year, because that was what we were instructed as a council, because this thing was going to last a year. So really, if we need to do future studies like this, we should be able to do it in a 2 to 6 month period of time.
Right, and to answer well the question, this is just a broad brush study based on a camera and a laser vision of the road. It does not account for the density of traffic. It does not account for a lot of other stuff in the model, as we explained from David. If you want to include and you want to have a full integrated model, you have to put growth that will be coming into a neighborhood. You have to add the increase in traffic density, right, that you are getting. None of those was included in this model. All of those are going to compromise existing road. So in order for you, if you want to revise this model in 3 years, we should be able to incorporate all those existing information that we know, so this model could be a better predictor, right, to provide the answer that you're looking for.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I do. It's a nerdy question, and I probably know the answer. But on some of the pictures that were presented, obviously you see mountains in the background, you see different regions of the nation. But the analysis, the truck that analyzes the roads, this is based upon Central Florida and how our roads are affected by weather, I'm assuming, even though it looked like they were from different parts of the nation. Does that? Because roads such as in desert areas, arid areas,
Or snow?
or they're just subject to different things.
Right,
So
right.
basically, this analysis is based upon the way
The Florida
roads react.
condition,
and so
right,
forth.
that's correct.
Great. Any other questions? All right.
All right,
Thank you, Dio.
well,
Appreciate
thank you so much.
You got it. Okay, next up. Phil, are you doing, or is it Jim?
Phil will be doing.
Phil, okay.
Good evening, Mayor and City Commissioners. Phil Martinez, Planner 2 with the City's Planning Division. The applicant has provided a construction site plan for a commercial development comprising of 28,040 square feet. The development area consists of approximately 3.83 acres and is located on parcels that are highlighted in yellow. And they're located south of East Main Street and east of South McGee Avenue. and the Hilton Garden Inn and Highland Manor are located to the south. The development plan proposes 3 buildings, where Building 1 is a proposed restaurant, brew pub, or microbrew. Building 2 is proposed retail space, and Building 3 is a proposed restaurant with a drive-through lane. The site is proposed to be accessed off of South McGee Avenue on the west side, and also off the Highland Manor entry road on the east side. The applicant has provided perimeter, foundation, and parking area landscaping. Such landscaping includes Florida flame red maples, southern live oaks, and sable palms. The applicant has also provided architectural elevations that are attached to the agenda packet. The Development Review Committee recommends approval of the Apopka City Center South construction site plan, subject to the applicant satisfying the attached Development Review Committee comments. Additional comments were discussed at the DRC that also need to be completed prior to final approval. This concludes my presentation, and Steph and the applicant are available to address any questions that you may have.
Okay, any questions for Phil?
I just wanted to confirm again, because I brought this point up a couple meetings. The fact is, and this is kind of odd for us to see this in the presentation piece, right? We're seeing stuff that we're not officially taking a vote on, right? Because the stance of staff is that the development agreement and that allows staff to make these decisions at the staff and DRC level. So I don't want to confuse people by thinking that we're making a decision as a council. We're not. This is just an informal overview of what's going on. And it's a little frustrating because I know that this thing has been a pretty fluid development over the past 6 years. And so the only question I do have is, it's my understanding that the parcel that the retail building and the proposed brew pub restaurant is still currently owned by the city and not the applicant. Is that correct?
Correct. The Tourist Development Group applied for basically a permission slip to apply for those on the city's behalf in order to get it through the review process. Prior to any type of formal approval by DRC or the Development Review Committee and staff, and before they can actually pull any site work or building permits, they do have to actually purchase the property.
Correct.
Yep.
And how long of a period of time does that typically take?
My guess is they've got just a few very minor things that they need to take care of in regards to the site plan itself. That could probably happen within the next month, easy.
Okay, but in terms of the purchase itself?
That only takes a couple days.
Okay.
They already have the legal description and everything in there.
Okay. The only thing, noteworthy that I saw on the concept plan was the patio being on the opposite side of the water feature. I just thought that was kind of odd.
That was actually brought up at one of the meetings that they thought that it would look better if they had an outdoor patio that could overlook the lake, and apparently a lot of it does have to do with the grading of the property. You look on the east side of, hold on. There we go. On the east side over here, there's actually a small retaining wall here, so that this actually drops down about another 3.5 feet. And they felt that this would, because they do have the water feature that's actually right here also, they thought that would still, the ambiance would still end up being.
Yeah, I realized when I said water feature, I should clarify that. I meant the water, the pond.
The pond, yes.
Kind of area versus a water fountain. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I don't have any other questions. I just wanted that clarification.
Thank you.
And when you say a restaurant with a drive-through lane, what are we talking about?
It's a Starbucks.
Starbucks, okay.
Yeah, back, if you recall back on when we updated the development agreement, that hadn't been part of the public knowledge yet, and so that was changed on one of the design plans to coffee. So this also, by the way, this is basically a single user, like Phil had mentioned. It's a brew pub restaurant. This is a multi-tenant building. They've announced a few different users up there, but it's anywhere from 3 to 5 different users according to the the architectural elevations, you'll notice they've got a few different units up in here, so they could pop 1, 2, 3, 4, possibly 5 different users in there. And one of the things that this does do compared to a couple of the different drawings that we've had or that we've been shown is it is one building versus multiple buildings. So the connectivity between businesses is a little bit easier to do instead of having to go out a curb, up a curb, over to one unit, and then down a curb, up a curb to another unit. And it just keeps it all a little bit easier to maneuver. And then, of course, we do have the connections to the brew pub. We've got connections here, and then right across the way is the hotel, and then the Highland Manor. So, and then the applicant or tourist is also looking at a couple other restaurants for the area to go on the north side of Main Street. We also have a couple lots over on the west side of McGee that are still up for development, and then they are also looking for another restaurant right off of 6th Street on the south side of the Highland Manor. So they're working on this. This is actually a little bit faster than what we expected in regards to the last development agreement that was done in July of last year. So,
And in reference to the drive-through, there's going to be enough area for stacking so the traffic.
yes, they actually are. They actually exceed our current code. They have stacking for about 10 cars. We just increased that to 8 at the last glitch amendment number 3. So. They actually do, and then the order kiosk is over on the back side, and the pickup is on the east side. So that also meets code. It is not in direct view of any of the actual roadways. Okay. That was one of those big things that I keep pushing for.
I just want to make sure that we have code enforcement to encourage the tenant across the street to increase the ambiance. Is that a gentle way of saying we need to bring it up?
Which
Yeah, I
one is
think-
that? Who's that?
On the, across the street from where the Starbucks will be.
Is that the gas station?
No.
No, well, that one too, but yes.
Yeah, that's
on
the
the other side.
catty corner over there, yeah. I get it.
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Commissioner Velasquez?
Nope. I came in very late with the development agreement, so this is kind of all new to me.
Yeah, I did want to make sure that everybody had the current development agreement with the general plan that, the master plan that was originally adopted along with
That's what I was
the
looking at.
PowerPoint even, because sometimes that helps for a refresher.
So they're actually moving forward and they're actually gonna,
Oh, big time, yep.
okay, because it kind of went stagnant for a little while there.
Yeah, it was
Everything went stagnant.
All because of COVID.
We're not
All because of
stagnant.
COVID, but they've actually excelled quite a bit, so.
Okay.
There's only four parcels left for purchase, and it's the 2 across the street off on the west side of McGee, this parcel, and then the sign, what I call the sign parcel at the end of 6th Street coming out onto 441. So that's a very, very minor one comparatively. So they've purchased over half the property so far.
And this is for them, for tourists to purchase?
Correct,
Okay.
correct. Tourist does the purchasing, then resells to the actual developer.
So we have Craig Govan here. I don't know, do you want to speak, or you good?
You have a question?
I got, yes. I mean, I know we were supposed to have met with a restaurateur last week. And you came up all the way from Delray Beach to meet with a restaurateur, and his wife was in the hospital, or blood pressure, or?
Yeah, he can give me an update on
Okay. So anyway, we were going to meet with a restaurant that wants to move into that little section there. So we're hoping, something comes to fruition on a standalone restaurant there as well. So,
Available anytime.
yeah, yeah. But anyway, so thanks for coming up, Craig, and thanks for your team and what y'all are doing. You got it. Awesome. Thank you. All right.
Thank you. Thank you very
Appreciate it.
much.
All right. Next up, we got the consent agenda. Anybody need to pull any of the items off the consent agenda? If not, look for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So
Mayor.
moved.
Got a motion?
Mayor, can public comment?
Oh, I'm
Let's take
sorry.
public comment.
Okay, yes, public comment first. Okay, Susan? it was on in the budget, our workshop, but it's not going to be approved tonight, but it's still in there, and we'd have to bring it back for city council approval, but, yep, okay. Thank you. You want to speak under this, or you want to speak under the cross-connection piece?
I'm going to speak in public, just to
Okay,
speak to
sure.
the open public. Good evening, everybody. Last time I was here.
Name and address for the record, please.
Sure, my name is Eddie Poirier. I used to live on Parkland Circle in Apopka, and I live in Boston.
Address,
And
we need your address, please, sir.
Yeah, I live at 21 River Neck Road in Boston, in Chelmsford, Mass. Anyways, the reason why I'm here tonight is because last time I was here, I spoke about backflow preventers and cross-connection programs. And since you guys had a presentation that was put on, I filed a complaint with the DEP, which you people are aware of. The DEP come out and did inspections. And you all reported that you had a settlement agreement with the DEP. Well, there was a few things that weren't accurate about that. Number one, the city attorney said that there was no fine at all for the cross-connection violations. Now, I went back and listened to it, said that's what it said on there, no fines at all. Now, when you look at the actual document, the document itself says that there were 4 violations, and each violation, there was a minimum of a $2,000 fine. I think the people in Apopka need to know how that $34,000 adds up. What exactly was the city fined for? Also, the DEP only addressed 3 years. I believe they addressed 17, 18, and 19. Well, just for the record, the city of Apopka, going all the way back to 2004, has not been doing what they were supposed to do concerning these cross-connection ordinances. And I'll make it very simple. The city attorney said that it was not the city's responsibility. Nowhere that should they go out and they're required to inspect people's homes. No, they're not. But it's your job to make sure that the homeowners get those inspections done. And what do? You mail out warning letters. If they don't do it, you send another letter. If they don't do it then you go out and shut the water off. Now, I've heard the argument that, well, this ordinance doesn't have any bite. Well, it has bite in St. Pete, it has bite in Tampa, it has bite in all these other areas. So what I'm trying to figure out is this. You all know my wife died from cancer, okay? My backflow preventer failed inspection in the year 2013. I lived in that house for 6 years, almost 7 years before I ever received a notice. How can the city of Apopka not be doing what the DEP has mandated? So Brian Nelson, when he got elected, he was well aware of these backflow preventers because we talked about them. I asked him, what does the city do? He says, I don't know what the city does, but you know, the county inspects them themselves. Well, I can't understand why, when Brian was elected, he did not come in and address the backflow preventers, find out why this was not being done on a regular basis. Also, who's going to be held accountable for this? Do you have a $34,000 fine? Now, I know you're going to buy a vehicle that you probably don't need to make up for it, but who in the city is responsible for not doing this? Who is the person? Is it Glenn Brooks? Is it Edward Bass? Who was the person that said, we're not going to do these cross-connection inspections? Somebody must have decided not to do it. And Kyle, didn't you say that there had not been notices sent out in 3 years? And let me just say one more thing. I was confronted when I came in here tonight in this room by your water manager. Listen, I've had an argument for 6 years. I've been battling for 6 years trying to get you people to look into what you all are required to do. What Brian's doing here, Brian's not fixing this. The DEP come in and they're telling you, you have to fix this problem, you have so much time to fix it, and if you don't get it fixed within a certain amount of time, they are going to fine you. So with that being said, I think all of you have an obligation to find out, how did this happen? Why did it happen? Because you're gonna lay out all this money, that whatever it is, even though you don't have to pay it to the DEP, you still have to buy a car you truly don't need. So I think that somebody owes an answer to the public. And I'll tell you what, Brian, you're the mayor of this town. For you to tell the residents that the water meets all standards and passes all tests, that's fine and dandy, but you're doing the inspections at the water plant. It has no effect if this is happening in the neighborhoods. And let me just say one more thing. I had asked you, just after you got elected, I said, Brian, if you can get these cross-connection things back in order, scheduled on time, and if you can start doing inspections in the neighborhood, I can move on in my life. I'm here tonight. I flew down here because I think it's important to tell the people the truth. We screwed up. We screwed up. We didn't do it, and now we're fixing it. But why did it take Eddie Poirier
Thank
to
you.
get this done? Why did it take me? And if any of the commissioners have any questions, I'd be
No,
happy
okay.
to answer them.
Thank you, Eddie. Appreciate you.
Do any of the commissioners have any questions?
Well, I think during the piece of business where we're talking about the cross-contamination, I would plan to address some of the issues that you brought up.
Thank you. Appreciate
I
it.
said during the piece of business where we talk about the cross-connection devices in the manual, I do plan to bring up the topics that you
Okay,
discussed.
that's fine. I think it's very clear what I've been trying to say, but I think it's important. You hold the public, you need to be honest with these people. You don't need to be misleading these people. Tell them what the fines were for. When you got the city attorney telling them that nobody got a, Brian, you can smile all you want, but that's the truth. He told us in this room that the city was not fined for the cross-connection. And ask him, he's right here, why don't you ask him? Ask him
Okay,
if he said
won't
it.
sit down and I'll have him answer. Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks,
all
Eddie.
for your
Appreciate it.
time. Listen, all of you are good people. And let me say one more thing. I heard from all the commissioners, but I didn't hear from Alexander Smith. I wanted the commissioners to speak to me tonight before they decided to do something with this
Okay,
new
thank-
program.
thank you,
And
Eddie.
Alexander Smith's the only one that didn't respond.
Okay. All right.
The matter of the fine was discussed with this council. As a matter of fact, Commissioner Bankston and I had a back and forth discussing that there was the amount of the fine, what was the offset, the P2 program we were going to submit. Secondly, the consent order was presented in your packets and was in front of you. There's no wool. I'm not trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. It was all there in front of you for you to view. And the packet is also available for the public to view. It's all straightforward. It's all public record. And I will not sit here and be accused of lying to this council. So that is final. The fine was discussed. You were fully aware that there was a fine amount, and the fine was going to be offset by a P2 program.
You never mentioned the fine. And you said it was not.
Okay. Anybody else, Susan?
Good evening, Council. My name is Stell Bailey, and I am from Cocoa, Florida. I am the Executive Director of Fight for Zero. It's a nonprofit organization that works on environmental health. And I'm also a nationally recognized advocate who works with Aaron Brockovich. And I also work with a national coalition on these water contamination issues, and that's what I'm here tonight to discuss. Lastly, I'm a cancer cluster survivor myself. In my medical records, it is documented that my cancer was caused by contaminants in my drinking water on the east coast of Florida. That's how I got into this work. I want to talk about the 12 people that died in a community in your city, how it was discovered that the city wasn't doing yearly inspections of their backflow preventers in that area, and when you did, it failed. The cancers these neighbors were diagnosed with were of the endocrine system, and nurseries surrounded their neighborhood. Pesticides and herbicides are endocrine disruptors, and there are numerous studies done in Lake Apopka about deformities in wildlife. For instance, the alligator population declined dramatically from 1980 to 1987. Endocrine disrupting chemicals like DDT were causing alligators to have reproductive failure. Lake Apopka was the recipient of pesticide pollution for 50 years. At one time, it was one of the state's most polluted lakes. I'm bringing this up because contamination doesn't stay within a fence line. Water moves, and so do contaminants. Chemicals do not know boundaries. Did you know also that one of the worst bird deaths known in the United States history happened right here in Apopka? Look it up if you don't know that. The former agricultural land used DDT and chemicals regularly. In fact, PCBs, not just pesticides, were also measured in alligator eggs collected in 1984. Some of these chemicals are classified as a probable human carcinogen and known to be very persistent in the environment. I'm actually well-versed in perfluorinated compounds and PFAS. I work on collecting scientific data on water quality, and I'm working with the University of Florida on a 3-year study. I work across the state of Florida on these water quality issues. Pesticides pollute water supplies, affect wildlife, and cause disease. Chronic exposures to harmful chemicals can cause long-term health effects, including cancer, which may not be identified for many years after the exposure. Environmentally induced cancer can take 15 to 20 years to develop, which is why it's extremely difficult to connect environmentally caused cancers. That's why the DOH never ever says there's a cancer cluster, because it's very difficult. And we have to recognize that, but we also have to recognize there could be a hidden danger there, especially if the backflow preventers weren't working and the contaminants could have potentially been getting inside these homes. It is unethical to put the burden of providing evidence of exposure and educating communities on the affected families after trauma of watching those they love be ravaged by this relentless disease. I wonder how many of you sitting on this council tonight know somebody who has fought cancer or has fought cancer yourself and understands the devastation that it causes. My suggestion tonight is that you heavily consider your moral grounds on this issue and consider the lives put in jeopardy after ingesting potentially contaminated drinking water for years. I also want to mention that there is $10 billion in infrastructure funds available and can be used to protect against contamination. And I highly suggest the sooner you connect with the EPA region and the state on that and you get your grants in, definitely talk to them. They have the money if you have contamination issues. What we do with Fight for Zero is we come into communities like this that have concerns and we provide them the resources that they need to take on these challenges without relying on agencies or the local government. We have experts, hydrogeologists, epidemiologists, doctors, environmental scientists that we work alongside to go and do testing in these neighborhoods to help them get answers so that they can get closure on their questions that are being asked.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate that.
Yes, thank you. You have a good night.
Yeah, well, one question for you. You understand how a backflow preventer works?
Absolutely. Would you like me to tell you?
Sure.
Sure. In simple terms, and I put this on my TikTok, which has 45,000 followers, a backflow preventer prevents irrigation water from contaminating your drinking water. Normally, water flows from the water production facility to your home, but when water flows in reverse, it does the opposite. And there are cross connections where undrinkable water can actually be connected to the drinkable water. The cross connection can provide a pathway for backflow of undrinkable water to go into your drinkable water. Backflow can occur because of reduced pressure in the distribution system,
Perfect.
which is why I brought out main
Awesome.
breaks.
Great answer, because I had our water department run a survey of that neighborhood. And for the last 10 years, we've never had a pressure drop below 20 pounds.
You've never had a main break. Do you have infrastructure issues in Apopka? At all? Do you?
I'm just saying, we're talking about backflow preventers. Isn't that
Right,
what
we're
that's-
talking about that, but if you have infrastructure issues, that could still be getting into their drinking water. Every time you have
So
a
on
main,
one
do you have main
neighborhood
breaks?
And not the rest of the city?
And how did you test that in 20 years? How did you test that?
Because it's a SCADA. We know whenever there's a pipe break and everybody gets a boil water
So you're
notice.
saying you've never had a pipe break?
No, I didn't say that. I'm saying we haven't had one in that neighborhood. Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Particularly, so you have that data. I would like
Yes.
to receive that data.
Sure, absolutely. Be happy to.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, anybody else, Susan? Okay, thank you. All right, next up, we got the consent agenda. Anybody need to pull any of these items off the consent agenda? Nope. If not, look for a motion to approve the 6 items on consent.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Smith,
Second.
second by Commissioner Bankson. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries unanimously. Next up, Pam.
I have two quick agenda items. I'll start by apologizing for the first one. I should have brought this last time I was here. It might have lessened the sour flavor of the discussion about the agreement we had with Expressway Authority. If I had told you that they were giving us 1.5 acres of property for free, it might have not sounded so bad. We went there, we needed the property along Emerson Park in order to construct Harmon Road. And we went there fully expecting them to say, tell us what fair market value is and then pay us. But instead, they surprised us and said, we'll actually give you that property. So the agreement, and it's this piece right here. It's hard to see here, but it's the piece in yellow. We own the piece along the back edge, but we need this little piece in here. And so that's, you can see the area, and this is the sketch from the legal description. And so this is their standard right-of-way transfer and continuing maintenance agreement. There's really nothing additional to maintain. We're going to put a road there. So there's not anything going to be left over. And of course, we'll maintain it. We're spending $4 million on a road. So the request is to approve this agreement. And if you have any questions, again, I'm sorry.
This is just a transfer.
Right. It's paperwork, but you have to
Approve that.
agree and to the agreement that we have to sign with the Expressway.
So in the mayor's absence, is there any question from the council?
None.
Do we have any question from the public? We'll bring it back to the council and let the mayor finish.
Okay. Need a motion to approve the right-of-way transfer and continuing maintenance agreement in order to acquire the additional right-of-way needed to construct Harmon Road.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Velasquez.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Smith. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
My next request, it has to do with a new half interchange on State Road 429. This is it would be to Binion Road, just a little bit south of Boy Scout Road. And this is a step in the process. We've actually been talking with Expressway about this for 6 months, maybe. I think it's been about that long. They asked us, they called for projects. You remember they came here and spoke, and we responded with some potential sites for interchanges. And this was the only one that they did not poo-poo. And then when they started looking at it, they realized it was actually a good project. They had their consultant look at it and found out that it meets their bonding requirements and it's cost feasible. It's a $20 to $25 million project. The other big part of this, and it has nothing to do with their ability to bond it, is the development on this side is known as the Ridge. They have an industrial component that's somewhere around here. So they're very enthusiastic about this. They're working with us related to right-of-way, redesigning a little bit of their site so that we can have an interchange here. We can't line up with Boy Scout Road because this development has been approved by council, and they would have to take like 6 houses. And when you go through the whole eminent domain process, you're probably talking $6 million. So it was easier to come down this way, and we have a willing partner here. They've looked at I turned it around so it was a little easier to see than what's in your packet. They did 2 concepts. One is a roundabout, and one was the one I just showed, a signal. We had a conversation with Orange County about it last week, and Orange County is also enthusiastic about it. No decisions have been made, but they are going to put it in their plan that gets approved by Expressway Board in April. It's fully supported by staff, and they expect that they can start a study. They just put a consultant under contract. They're going to do what's called a PD&E light, and they want to get that started right away. Worst case scenario, I think we'd see ramps in 4 years. if we can work out some of the right-of-way issues, which our partner in the Ridge is helping with.
Or
that-
already purchased the one little strip,
They
which,
purchased one strip,
Yeah.
and they're talking about purchasing another and then making the right-of-way donations. That could be escalated as much as 2 years. So the next step for us is for the mayor to send a letter actually requesting this. Even though we've been talking about it, there's this formal process. And I included a draft letter, so you get an idea of the kind of letter that Expressway is looking for. It's not finalized, but anyway, it's a project that I recommend. That area is growing. It's great for the fire department. They're enthusiastic about it because of their ISO rating and the time it saves them going to and from the north to the hospital. The hospital's enthusiastic about it. It helps people. It makes the hospital more visible. It's a more direct route. There are a lot of benefits. The best part, though, is it costs us nothing. So.
any questions for Pam?
No, I mean, I've probably brought this up before, and it's my own confusion, so I apologize. So it doesn't impact the limitations that the Wekiva Parkway was under when it was first built in terms of the amount of interchanges or on-ramps, off-ramps. There's no concern there, because, I know probably 5 or 6 years ago, Lake County had wanted to make an interchange up by where our north tower is, and they couldn't do so because there was limitations on the amount of interchanges that were permissible. So how does this get around that?
This is not part of the Wekiva Parkway.
Yeah, it's
So
only,
where does-
it's
where
only
does-
from 441 to
440
I-4.
Okay, so north of 441.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think it's just the big piece that goes
You only have,
east-west.
we only get to have the one intersection, which is Kelly Park.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's a good point.
I've brought this up before, and I always talk myself in circles here, so.
Well, they've
thank you.
changed the name of the road, and, I'm still calling the 451 the 429 because I'm old and, that's just what we do.
Thank you, Pam.
I would just suggest that I prefer to have a traffic light as opposed to a roundabout.
And what I would tell you is I think that our partners at the Ridge, because of their industrial component, is leaning that way. Roundabouts are not
For big trucks.
conducive to moving big trucks. But the Expressway is going to look at all that, and definitely, we're the major partner, and I'm sure that they will defer to our preference.
Thank you.
Traffic light, roundabout.
But we'll
I think,
see.
I think true, obviously, the truck issue, it has to be considered for there. I think there's a benefit on both. It depends on the application, but I love the connectivity of this. I'm very excited to see this happen.
Commissioner Plaska?
No, I know when Pam is involved in these deals, she drives a hard bargain. She thinks about a future and not just the present.
Thank you. But we just asked,
Yeah.
The mayor said, let's do this, and so that's what we did.
Well, quite honestly, we didn't, I had no idea they would even take it. And
No.
I said, but if you don't throw it up on the wall, it can't
I
stick.
think the first
so-
time we discussed it was one of their online public meetings for the widening, and you
right.
just kind of threw it out there.
And they took the
They
bait,
said, "Okay,
and here we
let's talk
are.
some
So,
more."
yeah, I'm excited, about these, $25 million improvement that will give us better access to,
Mm-hmm.
a major, toll road to get people off the local roads and onto the interstate. So, we're excited. So, all right, anybody from the public? Nobody?
The location, it would be, okay. Yeah, this road is Boy Scout Road. And this is Binion. And then this is where the toll road crosses over Binion. I'm sorry? Well, it's called a half interchange because it just goes to and from the north. So these will be the ramps right here that come off, and it will connect with Binion just south of Boy Scout Road. Does that answer your question? I'm sorry, then I don't understand your question. If you want to,
Well,
wanted to
so
know the location.
where's her house on Binion? I guess that's what she's asking.
Is, where is your house?
Whereabouts on Binion? Is that,
Is it north or south of Boy Scout
Scout.
Road?
her house is just north of Wisconsin. Can you do the address one more time?
Oh, sorry. So, I gotta go back.
Are one of the houses West Benton's house that was partially burned? Is going to be wiped out?
That's one of the things we're trying to get, we're trying to maybe purchase that, the developer or CFX or somebody to make that a part of the interchange.
No.
No.
It would appear that her house is just above just above that, like right up.
Somewhere up here?
Up higher. Right
Here?
about in there as I'm looking at the map. Approximately there.
Right. This, of course, obviously requires a realignment of the existing Boy Scout Road.
Yeah.
Yeah. Boy Scout.
Okay. All right. Okay. Any other? Okay. All right. Okay. We'll close the public hearing then and look for a motion to approve a request to CFX for a new half interchange on State Road 429 and Binion Road near Boy Scout Road.
So move.
Got a motion by Commissioner Bankson,
A second.
second by Commissioner Velasquez. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right. Next up, ordinance number 2877.
Ordinance number 2877. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Apopka, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of Apopka by amending Part 3 Land Development Code, Article 2 Administration, Section 2.4 Standard Review Procedures, subsection 2.4.2 Pre-Application Community Meeting, providing for the removal of the pre-application requirement by amending Part 3, Article 3, zoning districts, Section 3.2, agricultural and transitional use-based zoning districts, subsection 3.2.3, ag, agricultural district, to modify setback requirements. By amending Part 3, Article 3, Section 3.3, residential-based zoning districts, subsection 3.3.4, RSF1A, residential single-family estate district, to modify with requirements. By amending Part 3, Article 3, Section 3.3, subsection 3.3.5, RSF1B, residential single-family district, large lot, to modify lot width requirements. By amending Part 3, Article 3, Section 3.3, subsection 3.3.6, RTF, residential two-family district, to modify lot width and setback requirements. By amending Part 3, Article 3, Section 3.3, subsection 3.3.7, RMF, residential multifamily district, to modify lot width and setback requirements. By amending Part 3, Article 3, Sections 3.3, subsection 3.3.8, RMU, residential mixed-use district, to modify lot width requirements. By amending Part 3, Article 3, Section 3.3, special purpose-based zoning districts, subsection 3.6.7, MUESGT, mixed-use East Shore Gateway Subdistrict, to modify transparency requirements. By amending Part 3, Article 4, use regulations, Section 4.2, principal uses, subsection 4.2.2, principal use table, to provide for permitted uses and special exception uses. By amending Part 3, Article 4, Section 4.2, subsection 4.2.3, standards specific to principal uses, to modify swimming pool standards. By amending Part 3, Article 4, Section 4.2, subsection 4.2.3, to add car wash enclosed standards. By amending Part 3, Article 4, Section 4.3, accessory uses and structures, subsection 4.3.4, standards specific to accessory uses and structures, to modify swimming pool standards. By amending Part 3, Article 4, Section 4.4, temporary uses and structures, subsection 4.4.4, standards specific to temporary uses and structures, to add standards relating to the storage of boats, recreation vehicles, and trailers. By amending Part 3, Article 5, development standards, Section 5.1, off-street parking, bicycle parking, and loading standards, subsection 5.1.5, general standards for off-street vehicular parking and loading areas, to modify rear loading standards. By amending Part 3, Article 5, Section 5.2, landscaping and buffer standards, subsection 5.2.5, landscaping and buffer standards, to add Florida-friendly landscaping ground cover standards. By amending Part 3, Article 5, Section 5.5, fences and walls, subsection 5.5.6, material standard, to modify chain link standards. By amending Part 3, Article 5, Section 5.6, exterior lighting, subsection 5.6.7, general standards for exterior lighting, to modify maximum height standards. By amending Part 3, Article 5, Section 5.13, roads, streets, sidewalks, and bikeways, subsection 5.13.2, minimum street design and construction standards, to modify access point standards. By amending Part 3, Article 5, Section 5.13, subsection 5.13.5, private streets, to modify automatic opening device standards. By amending Part 3, Article 10, definitions and rules of measurement, Section 10.2, rules of measurement, subsection 10.2.4, exceptions and variations, to modify measurement requirements. By amending Part 3, Article 10, Section 10.4, definitions to define cigar bars. By amending Part 3, Appendix A, mixed-use Kelly Park Interchange, MUKPI, form-based code. Section F, permitted standards, permitted uses, to modify permitted uses. By amending Part 3, Appendix A, Section K, building design standards, subsection G, single-family residential, to modify rear loading lot standards. By amending Part 3, Appendix B, drought-tolerant grasses list, to add Florida-friendly landscaping ground cover standards. By amending Part 3, Appendix D, development design guidelines, Section 4.2.3, building facades, fenestration, to modify reflective glass standards, providing for codification, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, and providing for an effective date.
Good job. This is as good as last time there, Susan.
Gotta read that twice more, right?
Maybe
The title's longer than the book.
I was gonna say, let's continue it to next one, and we'll go back over it. So anyway, so no changes.
I have two minor changes that I sent out to council and staff. After discussion with Dr. Olmsted, who's one of our local experts on fauna, she recommended two actually be removed from the Appendix B, which is the ground cover portion. One of those, and it was actually highlighted or pointed out that it's a very flammable type of ground cover. So if anybody has any juniper conferta, also known as shore juniper, it is considered highly flammable, and the recommendation in the report was to don't plant it within 30 feet of a fence or a house. We figured that instead of allowing that as a permitted ground cover, just nix it, because if you're putting stuff in, you aren't going to look at that and go, oh, gee, it's 10 feet from my fence, and we don't want any accidents. The other one is periwinkle, which is Vica major. This is considered an annual and shouldn't be considered as a ground cover since it dies off. You can use it as part of a ground cover bed or a planting bed, but not as a primary ground cover. So the recommendation for that was to just simply take those off of Appendix B, which is what I did. So the copy from the December 1st has those. Your copy, which is the one to approve tonight, does not have those two items.
Okay, any questions for Jim?
Just being thorough. We can always modify this in the future, so.
Okay. Okay, anybody from the public wish to speak on this matter? Not, we'll close the public hearing and look for a motion to adopt ordinance number 2877.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Bankson,
Second.
second by Commissioner Smith. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next up, ordinance number 2882.
Ordinance number 2882. An ordinance of the City of Apopka, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of Apopka by amending Part 2, Land Development Code, Article 4, Use Regulations, Section 4.2, Principal Uses, subsection 4.4.2, Principal Use Table, to add mobile food vendors as a permitted use by amending Part 2, Article 4, Section 4.2, subsection 4.2.3, standards specific to principal uses, to add standards for mobile food vendors by amending Chapter 66, Taxation, Article 5, Local Business Taxes, Section 66-116, Schedule, to add mobile food vendors, providing for codification, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, and providing for an effective date.
Michael?
Good evening, Michael Rodriguez, City Attorney. There is one minor change, and this was based on the conversation and the suggestions that were presented during first reading. The two minor changes are, I'll point them out to you, it's on your agenda page 211, and it's to section, what would be 4.2.3, point E, point 4, point E4. That was the standards for food trucks operating on private property. Originally, we just had the spacing requirement that if you were on private property, it had to be 50 feet. There was a 50-foot setback from a residentially zoned property, and then 150 feet from any residential structure, unless there was a non-residential structure between the truck and the residential structure, in which then that buffer could be removed to 50. There were some questions regarding the operation of food trucks on properties containing a residential structure, because there are, at a minimum, two, maybe at least two of the zoning districts that enumerated in the code which permit a food truck to be a permitted use can have residential structures or have non-conforming residential structures. So we've added then a separate category and standard, which is a food truck placed on a property that has a residential structure. One has to have the consent of the property owner, and then secondly has to have the written consent of all residential properties within a 150-foot radius of that building. That was the issue that was brought up at first reading, and a consensus that was added. The second issue that was added is the next subsection, which would be sub 5, and that was what Commissioner Becker brought up, which would allow for a resident or a business, if they wish to hire a mobile food vendor for catering purposes. And the caveat is for private catering. They can bring the food truck, in this case, in any residential property or on a business that is not within the permitted zones for the sole purpose of private catering. They would then be subject to a special event permit, a special use permit, or special event permit or a temporary use permit that would fall along the current standards and guidelines in the Land Development Code for those permits. And then there would be additional categories, additional restrictions, which would be that you can only hire one food truck to cater your party. You cannot create food truck wars on your front yard with 4 food trucks for your private party. Also, if a food truck is being hired for a private event, there can be no sales, no public sales. The food is limited to the patrons of the event. It is basically you're a private caterer coming onto someone's property, and therefore your truck constitutes a catering service on the property. That would now permit HOAs, if they wanted to have a private function, They can then bring a food truck for that event for the sole purposes of private catering. So those were the two additions that were made. Aside from that, the rest of the ordinance remains the same as presented at first reading.
Any questions for Michael? Okay, anybody from the public wish to speak on this matter? Not, we'll close the public hearing and look for motion to adopt ordinance number 2882.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Velasquez.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Smith. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next up, ordinance number 2884.
Ordinance number 2884, an ordinance of the City of Apopka, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of Apopka by amending Part 3 Land Development Code, Article 4 Use Regulations, Section 4.2 Principal Uses, subsection 4.4.2 Principal Use Table to add small box discount stores as a special exception use by amending Part 3, Section 4.2, subsection 4.2.3, standards specific to principal uses to add standards for small box discount stores by amending Part 3, Article 10, definitions and rules of measurement, Section 10.4, definitions, providing for codification, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, and an effective date.
Michael?
There are no substantive changes are made to the ordinance.
Any questions for Michael? Anybody from the public wish to speak on this matter? Not, we'll close the public hearing. Look for a motion to adopt ordinance number 2884.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Becker.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Bankston. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next up, ordinance number 2886.
Ordinance number 2886, an ordinance of the City of Apopka, Florida, changing the zoning from T Transitional District to MUES GT Mixed Use East Shore Gateway Subdistrict for certain real property located south of Wilkins Street and east of West Orange Blossom Trail, comprising 3.05 acres more or less, and owned by Natural Vista LLC, providing for severability and providing for an effective date.
No changes? Okay. Anybody from the public wish to speak on
We
this
have
matter?
a couple people from,
What's that?
we have a few.
Oh, okay, sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Mindy McCormick?
I can bring a map up if that helps. Does that work? Okay. Do you want to point?
Hello, I'm Mindy McCormick, 4348 McDonald Glade Road in Apopka. My grandparents and great-grandparents helped establish Apopka. They're some of the founders of this city. I'm glad they're not here to see what's happened to it because it's heartbreaking, and I know my grandma Mac would be furious. But to come to my point, these apartments that they're wanting to put in by us will take we only have one road for an entrance and an exit. It's a very short, small road. We're agriculture out where we are. We kind of like to keep our lifestyle. I've been there 20 years. We've had several people out there that have been there way longer than 20 years. And as Commissioner Bankston said last time, this area is not conducive to rental apartments. I would rather see a business, like a daytime business, that, not a nighttime business. We want to be able to go to bed at night and feel secure and as safe as possible. And I think we should be respected for that we should be looked at that too. One of my examples of that was a credit union or a bank, and I know everybody's going, oh, good Lord, not another one, because you can fall out of one into the next one now. But I was trying to think of something that the hours were good. Having a rental complex in our area also greatly raises the chance of breaking and entering, home invasions, and the ever-present drug deals in our neighborhood. We deserve to feel safe in our own homes and not feel threatened. And I think that's very important. The subdivision that is coming next to where they're putting theirs, it was stated in the last meeting that I was trying to have the exit or an entrance moved to go with that's going in the subdivision. She said, well, it's under construction and it would be unfair. Well, it's not under construction yet. They're just starting. They're slaughtering animals and destroying the land. So they haven't started the construction. So moving a road one way or the other wouldn't be that big of a deal. And it would be a good help for us. And the airport was brought up, that the planes aren't noisy. Well, I'd like to see you sitting out in your backyard when one of those turbojets go off, or one of the seaplanes, see if you can read your book. Because you can't. It's extremely noisy up there. We'd like Wilkins Road to be left alone and left to us and them to find another exit. A lot of people won't get up here and speak from my neighborhood because they think you can't fight City Hall. Well, I'm a hard-headed Southerner, so I'm going to give it a shot anyway. But I was hoping, these companies have lots of money that they can throw at people to get whatever they want. We don't have that advantage. But we do need to be respected and cared about too, because we're part of this community. And like I said, my grandparents and great-grandparents helped make Apopka. And to me, it's important for us to be respected and our safety concerns and all to be addressed too. And I thank you for listening.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it.
Okay, Terry Weatherman.
Good evening, Commissioners and Mr. Mayor. My name's Terry Weatherman. I live at 4125 Wilkins Street. And my property is adjacent to this proposed project on the east side. In fact, my property borders this property in its entirety on the east side. And as Mrs. McCormick stated, our primary concern here is the ingress and the egress that was proposed with this project. In conjunction with that, this project doesn't seem to be conducive with the community as a whole, being a residential project that's pushed to the border of Orange Blossom Trail 441. It doesn't seem to be consistent with the things in that area. If this were a commercial establishment, it would be more conducive, in my opinion, with the area. With the development that's going into the south, which is Windward Hills, they have 101 homes going in that location. And the property that is to the west and borders 441 currently is commercial. That may be subject to change through rezoning, who knows, but that is commercial, and then the residential is pushed in the rear. And that seems to be the consistent way that these projects are in that location. So those are our concerns. I hope you can take some consideration to the people who live on Wilkins, because I think there's only maybe 7 homes in there, and we're all, 2 acres or better in that area. And to leave Wilkins and go either northbound or southbound on 441, you're putting your life in your hands a lot of times. I don't know how they're going to create an ingress and egress of residential community in that area and accommodate that. I mean, DOT would have to, get involved completely, because it's tough to do it now. And if you incorporate 50 more residents or cars, he's proposing, I think, 45 apartments on 3 acres, which that density seems to be a little excessive to me. So those are my concerns, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Crossan, you want to?
It sounds like there's not new information at this time, so I don't really need to add anything.
Okay. Okay, Bobby, are you the one handling it, or, okay. Why don't you, because we've got some new faces in the room, so kind of lay out what they're asking to do and where this.
For the record, Bobby Howell, Planning Manager. What the request is a rezoning of the property tonight. That's all that's being considered. Rezoning of the property to mixed-use East Shore Gateway. The property currently has a future land use designation of mixed use. So per our land development code, the future land use has to be consistent with the zoning. The only zoning that would be consistent with the underlying future land use of mixed use is the mixed use East Shore Gateway. They have told us they want to develop apartments on the property, but being that it would be rezoned to mixed use East Shore Gateway, It could be a whole laundry list of uses that are in that district. It could be commercial, it could be residential. Just because they have said apartments, in the future, it might not be apartments. So that's really kind of the background on this. All that's being considered tonight is a rezoning. No development plans have been submitted to the city. We have had a meeting with the applicant where they have showed their conceptual plan to us. We're going to have another meeting with them sometime probably after the first of the year.
But to build apartments, they have to come back to city council.
Absolutely.
So there's, so what we're doing tonight, if we approve it, is we're getting the zoning and the land use to match. Yes, ma'am. And we'll make sure you get a notice on the next year. But I just want everybody to understand, that what we're doing is just basically, making them even, and then when we come back, obviously you'll get notice that if we come back for apartments or commercial or whatever, you'll obviously get noticed, and you'll have your opportunity to come in and state your case. So I just want everybody is everybody clear on that? Bobby, I think said it pretty well, that you'll have another bite at the apple, that this is just the, kind of getting us all lined up with land use and the zoning. And so the next one will be the one that's important for your consideration.
And just to further clarify, this does not keep us in the future from reserving the right to say, no, it can't be that because it's not conducive. Correct.
Once, it's my understanding that the city attorney can correct me if I'm wrong, but if a development comes forward and it's a permitted use, we review it part of the code, and if it's a permitted use, I would think it would have to be approved, but the attorney can chime in on that one.
I mean, if a application is made and it meets the standard, it meets those objective standards for approval, then
But
denial of it has to be based on competent substantial evidence. So without speaking in any type of hypothetical, that's what the standards will be when it'll be presented.
But when we wrote our land development code or rewrote it, we put in very specific commentary about the discretion of this council. And if we make decisions based off of that evidence that's presented at the time, that's in our full purview.
Correct. Correct. And anyone challenging that would have to challenge that the decision of the council was made and was not based on competent substantial evidence.
Right. So it's right. I just don't want people to think it's as binary as it meets the letter T and it has to be Y. I mean, we have a council up here for a reason. We have to look at what's going in around it, if it's compatible uses, whatever the case might be, based off the evidence that's presented within that particular area. Right. Okay.
Correct, but it's going to depend on, it's depending on the application and then whether or not how it meets those standards.
Any other questions, comments? Good there, Commissioner Smith?
I'm okay.
Okay. Okay. All right, well, I look for a motion to adopt ordinance number 2886.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Becker. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Rod Olson from.
Yes, sir. Rod Olson, 3156 Rolling Hills Lane, Apopka. All I want to do is remind everyone that the last time we had a court recorder in here was Hamrick Estates, and the city, the county, and the school board all dropped the ball on that baby. We need to, this is a shot across the bow. Thank you.
Okay, we got a motion by Commissioner Becker. Have a second?
I'll second.
A second by Commissioner Velasquez. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed?
I'm going to say no, because I don't want a shoe spoon that ends up forcing us. It just gives me pause. I'm concerned about that area.
Okay. Motion passes 4-1 with Commissioner Bankson in the opposition. Okay. Next up, ordinance number 2887.
Ordinance number 2887, an ordinance of the City of Apopka, Florida, changing the zoning from PD Plan Development and RSF 1A Residential Single Family Estate District to RSF 1B Residential Single Family Large Lot for certain real property located on the east side of Tigris Drive and west of Jason Dwelly Parkway, comprising 38.62 acres more or less, and owned by Evermeadow LLC and Village of Fame LLC, providing for directions to the Community Development Director, severability, conflicts, and an effective date.
Okay, Bobby, any changes? No changes? Okay, anybody from the public wish to speak on ordinance number 2887? If not, we'll close the public hearing. Look for a motion to adopt ordinance number 2887.
Mayor, before we do the motion, this is the item of business at the last meeting. I asked concerning the report that says that there's capacity at the high school, and all the others said that there wasn't capacity. Wanted to get that clear as to why there's that discrepancy.
I went back after the meeting and took a look at the reports that were sent to OCPS. They deemed that it was vested from a zoning
Oh, it's
standpoint.
already vested?
Yes.
It's already
Okay,
vested.
That's a different one, yeah, okay.
Okay.
Good pickup,
All right.
Commissioner Smith. But, okay, look for a motion to approve ordinance number 2887.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Smith,
Second.
second by Commissioner Bankson. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, ordinance number 2888.
Ordinance number 2888, an ordinance of the City of Apopka, Florida, changing the zoning from T Transitional District and RSF 1A Residential Single Family Estate District to PD Plan Development for certain real property located east of South Binion Road and south of Williott Avenue, comprising 95.09 acres more or less, and owned by Marion Wade Hooper Life Estate, Mary Kathleen Hopper Life Estate, Harold Wayne Thomas, Melody Lynn Thomas, Mary Kathleen Hopper, Douglas Matthews Trust, Anita Matthews Trust, George A. Thomas, Sandra K. Thomas, Vernon Stapler, Gail Marie Stapler, Kenneth W. Davison, and Natalie W. Davison, providing for directions to the Community Development Director, severability, conflicts, and an effective date.
Bobby, no changes? Okay. Anybody from the public wish to speak on this matter? Not, we'll close the public hearing and look for a motion to adopt ordinance number 2888. Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me.
My name is Patricia Boulware. I live at 829 South Binion, and I have a couple of things I want you to consider.
Can you drop the mic down? Yes, ma'am, thank you.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. I live on 829 South Binion. I want you to think about your Lake Apopka Wildlife Drive. I want you to tell me where the wildlife is going to live. We have all of these subdivisions going in, and there's no place for the bears, there's no place for the possums, nothing. It's just one subdivision after the other, all the way from Plymouth, all the way to the 429 on Binion Road. Also, when you clear the land, you burn. You don't just mulch the stuff, you clear it. You take every single tree, and then you come back and you put in crepe myrtles and a couple of hedges. That is not going to do it for us. So please give some more thought to that, because Mr. Bronson's property's coming up. There's all these other things coming up, and it's all in this area. There's no place for the bears. Don't they have to have so many miles worth, 10 or something, for them to hunt through? And you have no trees on the wildlife drive to speak of. Everything is water. And so you're not going to have too much for your birds. And this burning has to stop. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else wish to speak on this matter? Not, we'll close the public hearing and look for a motion to adopt ordinance number 2888.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Bankson,
Second.
second by Commissioner Becker. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
I'm going to say nay for that.
Motion carries with a 4-1 vote, with Commissioner Velasquez voting
And I know it's the
in
second.
opposition.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, on neighborhoods like this, again, there's property right issues that come into play. I know that this particular development, they're a material amount of over the open space that's requirement per our code to try and offset some of that impact. So
I know that we have, what's the minimum open space? 20%? What?
20.
Can we, did it change from a higher higher green space? I think I asked you
Commissioner.
that because I
Yeah.
said Orange County has 30%.
In this is plan development, they're requesting a PD. In the plan development code, 30% minimum is required for open space. They're providing 37% of the site as open space. 1.6 acres for a community center, companion restrooms, a swimming pool, playground, mixed-use active field, in addition to preservation of wetlands and karst areas, which are sensitive environmental features that are basically limestone deposits. So they are in excess of what the code is requiring.
Is that considered green space or just open space?
It's open space, and our code allows all that as open space.
Okay.
Okay. All right, next up, ordinance number 2890.
Ordinance number 2890, an ordinance of the City of Apopka, Florida, to extend its territorial and municipal limits to annex pursuant to Florida Statute 171.044, the hereinafter described lands situated and being in Orange County, Florida, owned by E&H Claricona LLC, located east of Coral Hills Road and west of Claricona Road, providing for directions to the city clerk, severability, conflicts, and an effective date.
Bobby, any changes? No changes? Anybody from the public wish to speak on this matter? Not, we'll close the public hearing. Look for a motion to adopt ordinance number 2890.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Smith,
Second. Second.
second by Commissioner Becker. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next up, ordinance number 2891.
Ordinance number 2891, an ordinance of the City of Apopka, Florida, to extend its territorial and municipal limits to annex pursuant to Florida Statute 171.044, the hereinafter described land situated and being in Orange County, Florida, owned by Lisa L. Hill, trustee, located west of the Orlando Apopka Airport and Lake Penny, providing for directions to the city clerk, severability, conflicts, and an effective date.
Any change? No changes? Anybody from the public wish to speak on this matter? Not, we'll close the public hearing. Look for a motion to adopt ordinance number 2891.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Bankson,
Second.
second by Commissioner Velasquez. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next up, ordinance number 2892.
Ordinance number 2892, an ordinance of the City of Apopka, Florida, to extend its territorial and municipal limits to annex pursuant to Florida Statute 171.044, the hereinafter described land situated and being in Orange County, Florida, owned by Lisa L. Hill, trustee, located west of State Road 429 and north of Lust Road, providing for directions to the city clerk, severability, conflicts, and an effective date.
Any changes, Bobby? Okay. Anybody from the public wish to speak on this matter? Not, we'll close the public hearing. Look for a motion to adopt ordinance number 2892.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Velasquez.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Smith. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries unanimously. Next up, ordinance number 2893.
Ordinance number 2893, an ordinance of the City of Apopka, Florida, to extend its territorial and municipal limits to annex pursuant to Florida Statute 171.044, the hereinafter described lands situated and being in Orange County, Florida, owned by Lisa L. Hill, trustee, located at 4601 Hogshead Road, providing for directions to the city clerk, severability, conflicts, and an effective date.
Okay, no changes? Okay. Anybody from the public wish to speak on this matter? If not, we'll close the public hearing. Look for a motion to adopt ordinance number 2893.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Bankson,
Second.
second by Commissioner Velasquez. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed, motion carries unanimously. Next up, ordinance number 2894.
Ordinance number 2894, an ordinance of the City of Apopka, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of Apopka by amending Chapter 78, Utilities, Article 4, cross-connection control, providing for codification, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, and providing an effective date.
Good evening, Michael Rodriguez, City Attorney. There are no substantive changes to the ordinance from the first reading. I want to take this opportunity to clarify the issue in regards to the consent order. Mainly, the consent order does not specifically enumerate what violation was fined what amount. It gave a general amount which I exchanged with this council and was also present in the wording of in the consent order itself, which you had available for review. We're not contesting. The consent order is basically a settlement between DEP and the city accepted that fine amount. We're not contesting that fine amount. We have accepted that fine amount. As you can see from and if you want to research the consent order gives a final amount. It then says it involves these violations. However, it does not say that the city was fined X for this fine, X for this violation, X for this violation, Y for this violation. Also, the consent order goes into detail as to any additional fineage based on gallons of discharge, which leads me to infer that most of the fines are related to the discharge. However, what is relevant is that the fine amount is what the fine amount is. I presented that fine amount. You had the consent order to review that fine amount. So, I'm not going to be here to be told I'm a liar. I know Mr. Poirier has a cottage industry of calling everybody except for himself a liar. So, but the fact of the matter is, the fine amount is clearly enumerated. The total is clearly enumerated in the consent order. It is not broken down. You cannot find what the amounts are for each violation. What the DEP did was give what a minimum fine is for a violation. However, that doesn't necessarily mean, and it didn't weigh what the violations are. Additionally, the P2 agreement that we entered into with DEP deals again with different offsets for different pollutions, for different discharges, which brings again the matter that a lot of the fines were really related to the wastewater discharge, which can be enumerated, and there are additional penalties if the discharges are not taken care of, which are tied to specific dollar amounts, tied to specific volume of discharge. But the bottom line is, there was no misinformation. There was no attempt to mislead this council. The fine is what the fine is. You accepted that fine when you agreed to enter into the consent order. DEP accepted it. DEP also, the consent order was drafted between my office and DEP. And DEP gave no inclination and never any statements as to how much each incident was fined at a specific amount. We came to that amount, and that is the amount the city agreed to accept. So I hope this clarifies the issue before this council in regards to a consent order that's been executed. And now we're in the process of complying with that consent order, with this part being this ordinance, which is subject to your adoption tonight.
Any questions for Michael?
No, I mean, to your point, the consent order, I'm looking at it right now. So Section 8 basically, gives it the total amount, 34,518, right? And then talks about other civil penalties. And then the last sentence there just says the civil penalty in this case includes 4 violations that each warrant a penalty of $2,000 or more. To your point, doesn't specifically break it out. And then Section 9 talks about amounts per discharge volumes and things like that, but it doesn't formulaically step to the 34,518. Get it? Just, just me sitting here from my perspective, I mean, there's a lot of emotion in this thing, right? I mean, factually speaking, there's just a lot of emotion. And at the end of the day, the next piece of business, the manual that we have, I mean, it clearly doesn't understate the importance of these backflow devices, the cross-connection risks that are involved, and the importance of us monitoring this program. So I think there's truths in all sides of this thing, but again, I'll refrain from the personal aspect of things and the emotional aspect. But I'll kind of reserve my comments until the next piece of business because it relates to the specifics in the
Correct, right. The ordinance establishes basically your It's almost as if, it's a very rudimentary comparison, but the ordinance is the Constitution and our manual are the statutes. So the ordinance, it gives a broad picture of what the requirements are. Now, what the ordinance was, it's not exactly a full rewrite of our prior cross-connection ordinance. And there was no mandate from DEP that we had to completely redo it. DEP's, the consent order clearly states it's an update. The ordinance, as is drafted, was a streamline of our prior ordinance. I think I like to try to remove superfluous wording that wasn't necessarily needed. It directly references the Florida Administrative Code section in relating to cross-connection, which is also very broadly drafted when it comes to the authority in regards to DEP in both local governments. So this ordinance is based on other jurisdictions who have similar ordinances, and then and our manual was also based on a review of various other jurisdictions. We can get into those details when we discuss the manual.
Any other questions for Michael on this one?
Well, again, as stated, there's a lot of emotion involved, and it's hard to reason with emotion. My hope is let's get to the bottom of these things and get resolved and be able to move forward. And I think that this helps us move forward in a positive path. That's great. It's disappointing that those who oppose that can't stay to hear the full of this, because I was hoping there'd be more information brought forth here. But sometimes that'll never really resolve it. Again, there's facts and then there's perspectives. Two people can look at the same accident and come up with a different conclusion. And so, I spent several hours really trying to dig to the root of those things and gain an understanding of that. And, I had asked some of staff to present some of that information from a very professional level that helped me get a grasp of what really we're looking at and why it's important.
Right, and that's coming in our next
also the
item.
other side of that, and so I think they're going to bring more of that. So I'll just wait for that. But, I want us to move forward as a community in the right way, and I think this is good. We've highlighted it. We understand it. I understood it as you stated it, so I'm not sure why there was a misunderstanding on the other side. That was exactly what I understood. So
I just wanted to clarify it on the record.
All right.
Actually, one last question. So having said that, so the whole purpose of us passing this ordinance and then the next piece of business, getting to the minutia of the actual manual itself, by passing this ordinance, are we addressing all issues within the consent order? And have they, I guess, approved the in-kind project that we've put forth? Do they have to do any sort of cursory review of the manual that we're about to take action on the next piece of business? Like, does the combination of this piece of business and the next piece, assuming they both pass, does that satisfy the consent order?
The consent order did not give DEP a review or kind of a review prior to adoption.
Okay.
What the consent order clearly stated is that by December 31st, we were to submit an updated ordinance and an updated manual to them.
Okay,
That was the language in the consent order.
And the in-kind project,
The in-kind project, the Public Works has already submitted, that process has already been commenced.
Okay, so assuming we pass the manual, then the next stage gates are basically end of January, end of February, and then by, I think, February is we have to have proof that we've started enacting the testing and all the things that are outlined in the manual.
That we've begun the program to submit the surveys. I think it's important to note that the administrative code does not mandate that local governments have to do the testing or the actual inspections. The administrative code says that the local governments are to ensure that you do not have prohibited cross connections. They're very broadly written. So the code, our ordinance amendment, which really much echoes what was in the original ordinance, and our manual will state that there are going to be processes and procedures for the city to ensure that we don't have prohibited cross connections. And then the requirement is, on the parts of the local governments, is that we have to submit, and this is what the city was cited for. It was what the consent order specifically states, and what the city was cited for, is that the city did not submit the state form, which basically enumerates How many devices are within the city? How many have failed? If some had failed, why did they fail? And what steps were taken to ensure that the incidents were taken care of? There's a specific form that DEP mandates that has to be filled out. And what DEP cited the city for was not submitting that form in, get my years correct, that I don't want to misspeak. But yeah, it's 3 specific years that DEP, right, 17, 18, and 19, in which that form was not submitted to DEP. And it's a specific form. You can easily pull it up online. That's the form, and that is the sole information that DEP seeks. How many of these devices are within your jurisdiction? If there have been any improper cross connections, how many were identified, and then and basically what has been done to ensure that the cross connection has been fixed. That's the information that DEP requires. Now the statute, the administrative code, and our ordinance, again, most of this onus falls on the property owner to ensure that they get the inspections. We can do a reminder or as part of our survey to make sure we know how many there are. But in the end, it's up to the property owner. And the ordinance now clearly lists enforcement mechanisms that the city has to get somebody to do what they need to do, whether it goes through code enforcement or up to shutting off the service. Now, the administrative code does not mandate that local governments have to shut down service. It provides it as one of the 3 options. So I think it's the way that the code is written does not impose mandates on the local governments to, you must do this. It'll state local governments take these precautions and take these options, and it's going to be up to the local government to decide.
I mean, and then that's where you get to this kind of philosophical debate, right? I mean, to Mr. Poirier's point earlier, it's, okay, if you say that we as a city want to do this measurement, not the burden on us to do the actual testing, but ensure our residents are forced to test it if these connections exist, and they'd have to do the backflow certification. If we think that that's a guiding principle for us as a city, we've got to actually go through and shut off water if people aren't going to adhere with the manual that we potentially would be, because the manual is pretty clear. It talks about how high-risk contamination is. It talks about, the step of enforcement that we're going to take. If we go through steps 1 and 2 and don't invoke 3, then what everybody's just going to say, oh, yeah, that's city.
Correct.
So if we feel like it's important to us, we've got to really enforce this policy.
Correct. And that's the city's and staff's prerogative.
All right, any other questions? Anybody from the public wish to speak on this motion? Yes, ma'am. Come on up. Got to come up and give your name and address for the record, please. Pull that mic down. Yes, there you go.
I'm Bobby Boy, 2317 Boy Scout Road. You talked about mandating, about the getting the inspections, putting it back on the homeowner. Are there fees for those tests that they come out and check with?
Yeah, I mean, the way that the manual is written, again, this is the next piece of business, but the way that the manual is written, it would be on the onus of the homeowner, and they would have to use a certified backflow preventer tester in order to do that by every 2-year testing on their backflow preventer.
It depends on the device. There's some devices now that don't require inspection up to 5 years and don't require inspection. It's basically, you put it in 5 years, you just put in a new one because they really aren't to be inspected. So that's one of the things right. That's one of the things the manual actually wanted to address is the change in technology, because there are now devices that actually last longer. But yes, it's the financial burden of the property owner to get them inspected. If they need to be replaced, to replace them, to purchase the device and to replace them. There may be some financial assistance. We have incorporated that. I don't want to jump ahead, but we have incorporated that into the manual. But that is going to be based on there being allocated funding on the part of the city.
Are there there are some people that would put a burden on. I'm on well and septic, but that prevent the backflow thing. But it was a question I wanted to ask.
So if your house is on well, then you don't have to have a backflow preventer.
No, but there are people that are on.
You have well for their irrigation,
Right.
they have to have a backflow preventer then. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Absolutely. Okay. All right, we'll close the public hearing. Oh,
Roger
oh, I'm
Speck.
sorry.
Roger Speck at 7 West Main Street. I just want to make sure I'm clear because I'm a little trying to figure out what's going on. So if I understand correctly, right now, we're putting in a policy for backflow preventers for residential as well as commercial.
Correct, yes.
How do we know if we even have that? Because I've never heard this discussion in the 20 years I've lived in Apopka. So I don't know exactly how has this process been done in the past. So I'm just unclear because I know our commercial building is probably about 40 years old, and then my home is 21. So I'm just trying to figure out, it says something put on the resident, but I'm just trying to figure out, at what point did this happen and what do I actually have at my house? So I'm just unclear at this
You
point.
should have gotten on your water bill.
Yes,
and-
but it didn't have an address. It just asked you if it was a irrigation. It was pretty vague, if you ask me. I really didn't know what to do with it. I know I submitted it back, but I didn't know what property was tailored to, so it was kind of unclear. So I'm just trying to figure out if there's a year span where you should have a backflow meter or you shouldn't. I'm not sure.
Well, it should have had, it's got what would force you to have a backflow preventer. It depends, if you have irrigation, if all you had was, water into your house with no irrigation, you wouldn't have to have it. Everybody else basically would have to have a backflow preventer. So if you have well water for your irrigation, you have an irrigation system at all, you'd have to have a backflow preventer. But if your only water is coming into your house and staying in your house, you're not required to have a backflow preventer.
Okay, so it's if your irrigation and,
Period. Doesn't matter what kind of irrigation you got, you have to have a backflow preventer.
okay, but I guess at this point, I wouldn't know I don't know what a backflow preventer looks like. So I'm just trying to figure out how
We've got show and tell over there, Rogers.
Who do you call to figure out this is what I have? I guess
well,
I'm getting it.
there you go.
Who?
They're on the table.
They're on the table.
Well, I think the broader conversation is this. If you query the majority of the residents in the city of Apopka, not many of them are going to know what backflow is, right? And all of a sudden, if we pass these things, they're going to say, what? I'm supposed to do what now? How do we, who's in charge from the city perspective to educate our residents? And again,
We'll have that as part of our second.
Let's get to the next one.
And speaking as a resident of the state of Florida, I have lived in multiple jurisdictions, and not a single jurisdiction I have ever lived in. City of Boca Raton, Palm Beach County, City of DeLand, Volusia County has ever conducted a survey on my property. So this is not an Apopka problem. If it is a problem, it is not solely an Apopka problem.
And I guess in Orange County, there's only Orlando and Orange County that even have a program at all, so.
Orlando and Orange County have a different style of program that was probably not in the best interest to emulate as far as the city. I think our program, based on the jurisdictions that I reviewed, our program is going to be similar to Ocoee's, Venice, Sarasota, are some of the other jurisdictions I looked at. But I know that in a cursory review, Ocoee's ordinance is identical verbatim, word for word, to our prior ordinance. And but I can assure you, in all those jurisdictions I lived in, when I lived in Palm Beach County, actually my irrigation was tied to my potable water. I didn't have reclaimed water. Palm Beach County Water Utilities never notified me in 14 years that I lived in my house in unincorporated Palm Beach County.
Can I just ask, I think I did ask it that, before 217, we had an ordinance that spoke about the backflow. How are we managing it before 217? How were residents being notified regarding their backflow? I mean, how were the inspections that?
It would be speculation, and staff, it would be speculation whether there was notices or not. I can't
I don't
answer-
think
I
there
can't
ever
answer
were
that.
notices.
And I don't
I've
want to give
never
an
had
answer.
I would venture to say we've never had notices.
I can speak to, I think, commercial. I think commercial was all, pretty much the majority of commercial was noticed and took care of theirs. But residential-wise, I don't think that I've seen any from that period.
In
So,
the years
and
you were-
you remember, when, was it 2016 that the DE, that they changed the regs? 16, so, right. So 2016 was kind of when they changed the regs for the requirement.
Okay.
Well, I know, I was with Rogers. I didn't have a clue what they were until I did sit down with staff, and they're going to make it make sense, I believe, to you as they did to me. But the bigger issue that it helped me understand was it is an individual problem for each house, and the siphoning issue. That's what is the danger. If you have a
Bingo.
break in your own line, then because you're irrigating and because there's contaminants in, there's everything from fertilizers and things like that, there's a possibility that it can draw it into your own regular, but it's not possible because of the pressure for it to back into anyone else on the street. And this is what I think the mayor was trying to bring out. It's painful because, as it was being said, we're not unfeeling and uncaring. I did lose my mother to cancer. So, these things are personal to all of us, and I really endeavored in this whole concern to put myself in his shoes as well. So, I think there's a lot of compassion with this. So I'm just looking forward to the instruction here that I think is going to help make this make some more sense. And then also, contaminants have to be at a certain parts per million. They can show up and it not be dangerous until it reaches a certain level. So just all of those things, again, the science really does help us understand it.
Okay, thank you. All right, with that, look for a motion to adopt ordinance number 2894.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Bankson,
Second.
second by Commissioner Becker. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed, motion carries unanimously.
4-0.
What's that?
Smith's not there, so I
Oh,
just make
Smith-
sure, make the record reflect
Oh,
that
I'm
the
sorry,
vote is 4-0.
okay, yes,
Yeah.
okay. All right, next up,
Do
resolution,
we need to have him here since he's present?
no,
Well,
Because that
no,
would
we
be
still
a-
have a quorum, so if he's
Yeah, we still got a quorum.
left the meeting.
That wouldn't be viewed as a.
He hasn't physically abstained, but he's not present to vote. But we still have a quorum, so it's still a valid vote.
It's never happened since I've been here, so I thought I'd ask.
okay. Next up, resolution 2021-65.
Resolution 2021-65, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Apopka, Florida, adopting cross-connection control manual, providing for severability and providing for an effective date.
Okay, this resolution is the mechanism to adopt the updated cross-connection control manual that is required pursuant to the consent order, and secondly, is required under Florida Administrative Code 62-555.360. Hopefully I got that right. And if I didn't, it's because it's my memory and I did not attempt to mislead you. So the manual has been updated. Some of the substantive updates to the manual is we've updated it to be consistent with the emerging technology when it comes to the devices, especially the one device. And I'm going to just introduce it. Then at the second part, I'm going to defer to the technical staff because they know a lot more about this than I do. I don't purport to be a water engineer or any type of water expert. But the new manual enumerates specific devices based on the type of connections and the type of properties. It does also now specifically reference certain commercial connections and what is going to be required. And it sets out the inspection requirements and the obligations of the property owners. It specifically also sets out that the responsibility and the financial responsibility for it falls on each property owner to ensure that their device is present, that their device is working, and that when they obtain the inspections, those that have inspected are to notify the city that inspection has been complete and give the city those inspection results. That's the information that the city then turns around, incorporates into the form, sends to DEP to state that that there have been inspections based on under the administrative code and that we're complying with the administrative code. The manual also sets out, and this is one thing I want to clarify, and it came up in the public comment section, and I do want to clarify. There is not a single jurisdiction in the state of Florida which still has the responsibility for water quality past the water meter. The language that's in our manual I looked at different jurisdictions, actually comes from the city of Tallahassee. The city's obligation ends at the water meter. From the water meter forward, that obligation falls on the property owner because the city has no control over the pipes or any type of the water system within the property owner's property. So it's kind of dangerous to state that, well, if you don't test the water coming out of you have to test the water coming out of my sink and you're responsible for anything that comes out of the sink. That's not how the state of Florida nor the EPA tests municipal water. It's going to be tested from the source, and the obligation on the part of the city, and it's enumerated clearly in the manual, obligation of the city ends at the water meter. After the water meter, it's the property owner's responsibility because then the water is within the control of the property owner and his or hers, I'll say theirs, their infrastructure. So at this point, I'll defer to staff to give you more of the technical breakdown and how that the manual will be implemented.
And I do want to ask right there, because that highlights the rub at this point, because if it's my responsibility, but I don't even know about it, I don't know that we're supposed to check those, and the city is supposed to let me know and hasn't, that's, I think, where this question is. And if the state, the DEP has not been requiring cities to do that until 2016, and at that point, I mean, is this something that it's nebulous, and it's something that they're saying we should do, but again, I think our next contestant is going to help answer some of that of why. Is there a danger? Yes. Because I asked, well, why then were backflow preventers invented if there's not a need for them? And then I think, again,
unfortunately, the way that the administrative code is written and all the other statutes are written, it isn't a mandate from the state down to the local governments. And to be honest, I don't think, at least in the next 25 years, will we ever see a mandate come down from the legislature in Tallahassee. So it really does fall on the individuals. And there really isn't any statutory or legal obligation on the part of local governments to step in and perform the inspections, perform the replacements, install the items. And that's something that has been waived. There are jurisdictions where they flat out state the backflow preventer is going to belong to the local government. It's their item. They're going to put it on your property. You're going to end up paying a monthly fee in your water bill because the county or the city owns the preventer on your property. And there's going to be a governmental instrument within private property. That's something you can win. That's the prerogative of the council. But we are following the lead of many other jurisdictions in the state of Florida, which still put it on the property owner and have it as their prerogative to provide this on their property without it being an express mandate that can open a touchy subject when it comes then to mandating folks to do certain things.
But they are requiring us to notify them now.
There is a requirement to note it's not a direct requirement. It comes in that indirectly that the local governments have to notify the state that we know how many of these devices, and I don't say backflow, it's basically a cross-connection device. What is not permitted is a cross-connection. And cross-connections take on a whole varied roles. Theoretically, you can have a cross-connection if the end of your garden hose goes into the ground and ends up siphoning groundwater into your system and it's not prevented, that's your cross connection. Now, can it happen in theory? A lot of things can happen in theory, but that's a cross connection. So what the code, the administrative code, and in a case of ordinance, is out to eliminate cross connections. And you can eliminate a cross connection by using a backflow preventer. But what the requirement is the elimination of cross connections. And that's what the state is looking for. So that's why we have to notify the state if we have discovered any cross connections and what has been done to ensure that the cross connection has been eliminated.
So it's like car manufacturers are not obligated to tell people if you drink antifreeze, it can kill you. That's the driver's responsibility to find that out for himself. But if he doesn't know that and is thirsty, again, it's just one of those nebulous things. And I'm just trying to say, it's like trying to catch a frog, and every time you grab it, it keeps moving. So,
Or unfortunately,
just so
probably
we have a clarity of what we're supposed to do.
The
and then
closer
we follow.
analogy would be that the DMV doesn't have an obligation to tell you that antifreeze, you can't drink your antifreeze.
There you go. Okay.
So if the cross fails, if now residents start to say, mine is failing, and now what's the next step? I mean, they get someone that comes in and tells them it's failed. Do they know how long it's been, it hasn't been working? Or do you understand what I'm saying?
I'll defer that to staff.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know if
let's-
that's,
yeah,
I'll let me allow staff to make their technical presentation, and then we can proceed with technical questions to them.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, Paula Brown,
All around,
pull that mic.
cross-connection coordinator.
Cross-connection.
I came on in August, so a lot of the questions about prior, I can't answer personally. And I have the manual in front of me. If you have specific questions on sections, I can explain them. So I'd rather answer a question. I wasn't just
Sure,
going to sit
sure.
up here and babble.
She's our technical
But-
expert.
But as far as the one you just asked,
Right.
no, you can't tell how long it has failed. Because I can test. There's a couple pieces of, it's 2 spring-loaded check valves in a double check. There's 4 different devices, 4 different types of devices. And I don't want to have your eyes glaze over. But basically, yes, every one of them has consumable parts. After a while, they can break down. But it could happen in a year or 2, like DEP says, they've seen, you only have to test every other year. And I worked for Orange County for 30 years, and 12 of them were in backflow, so I know how they did it there. And I was out doing those cross-connection inspections. The inspections are done at the time that it's built. You wouldn't be allowed to live in there if there was a cross-connection. So really, at a residence, the homeowner's got to get creative with their piping to have a cross-connection, from line to line, from the reclaim line over here to the potable line over here, and actually make a T and feed it over here. It's very rare.
It is.
Yes. I mean, why would you dig up your yard and do that to your pipes after you move in? The backflow preventer prevents flow from coming from the house into the main. We protect the main because everybody's drinking the main water. So if something like a cross-connection, a hose left in a pail full of soapy water or something that had been cleaned, and then you lose pressure, it can back siphon, just like when you used to, clean out I used to with my aquarium, you put a hose in it and then at a lower level and it would siphon. But it's not a strong pressure. I mean, the backflow preventer, it will work. I mean, will prevent anything from coming back into the main. That's why they want them there. It has 1,000 things have to go wrong for them even to have the issue. And but you're trying to prevent against everything. One thing that was spoken about earlier with Mr. Purier, the line breaks. If the contamination came in through a main break, because I guess the question was my backflow preventer wasn't working, so it happened something happened to get into my house, but the backflow preventer doesn't stop water coming from the main to the house, or else you wouldn't get any water to your house. It prevents contaminants from the house to come into the main. And so, yeah, she gave a good description of what a backflow preventer is, but it's just the flow. It prevents it one way. I mean, because you have to be able to accept water to your house. And I'm rambling because I'm not sure what I'm covering. If you guys have some specifics. But as far as, I know that there's always been a backflow prevention program. There's not been a coordinator. So this one was doing this part, and this one was doing, this staff was doing a lot of different parts. I really don't think that Apopka was big enough. I mean, it gets to a point where you do have to address and make staff for a program kind of thing. The commercial accounts have been testing because they're sending me the test and I'm putting in the computer. So, and that the old ordinance said you could cut them off, you could shut off the water for not testing. But it just becomes on how much, when are you big enough to then break it down to the residents and, to actually send out letters to the residents. And yeah, you probably need to have some education. We have sent a few letters out, and the people what they've called me is give me a list of testers, of people who can test, which a tester would have to have his backflow certification current, as well as the meter that is used to test the backflow would have to be calibrated annually. And that's one thing. The testers that come, they can repair as well. So when you were saying, like, if I come to your house and I test, then I'm ready to repair then. And that's going to be an extra charge, because if I'm charging you to test, it would be.
So you just mentioned that you have sent out notices.
We
to have
sent-
them. Why did you send out notices to specific residents? Is it that you're
It
not-
was kind of a little bit of a test. I just wanted to start. The consent order was saying they wanted it to start, but that was before we kind of revised the manual.
Okay.
And the manual now gives us options that, like I'll send you, and I'll give you a due date, and if I say I'll give you a month I'll send a letter out because you're not going to know anything about it. So I'll say your backflow, and I'll have that information from the computer. It'll say what device you have and where it is, and usually it's in a separate box just past your meter box, because it's in the ground, so you wouldn't see it. That's why most people don't know they have one, because it's on the property owner side of your meter, yes. Then you'll have a due date, and if we don't receive the test by that due date, I'll send you another one in 2 weeks, to remind you. But if I don't get it in 2 weeks, then this gives me the authority to test it or have a third party test it, and then just put that cost on your bill, on your water bill. So I don't have to shut your water off. I don't have to fine you. I don't have to come in guns blazing. And I thought it was a good solution, because there's already mechanisms in place to make payments on your water bill. So we're not asking somebody to, it's a $50 jump, oh, do I have to pay it all at once kind of thing. I know there's already a mechanism in place. And that way we don't own the backflow device. It's still yours. It's just that you need to start maintaining it. And a lot of people are just going to say, I don't want to find somebody, you just do it.
So how are you going to start the program, where you will go into different subdivisions? Because you say that which subdivisions have these backflow.
Right. Yes, we can. Well, that would be the easiest way to do it, is in chunks. I can't send out 10,000 letters and have it all come back at once. So we can pull it up by subdivision and send those letters out that it's testing, and then when the calls come in, what's happening, and do all the explanation. And we'll try to maybe work out something on the website for a list of licensed, certified testers.
Yeah, we're going
as
to
well.
vet some of these
Yeah.
licensed backflow preventer
Will
testers.
you have something on the website that says, all right, and I'm gonna take my
Mm-hmm.
subdivision in Rogers. We're in Rock Springs Ridge, where you're gonna say, okay, we're gonna start sending out letters to the residents in Rock Springs Ridge. If you live in Rock Springs Ridge, expect a letter. Because then what happens is, when people start getting letters randomly, they just can't figure it out. If we can put something on the website
Sure.
that says that we are now going to be doing the backflow inspections at this particular subdivision. Because then it gives the residents in that subdivision the time to get the inspector. Because then,
Right.
actually, if an inspector comes into the subdivision, he can do several homes.
Right, especially.
Rather than coming one at a time here and there. Because sometimes when you get these inspectors, they'll say, well, I'm not available for another 2 weeks. But I think that if you can kind of, in a website, pick a subdivision and then kind of notify the residents, this way, that if they get an inspector, at least he can do several homes.
Sure, and it'd be great, it's not, HOAs are different every place. The best, if the HOA would get together, if everybody and present, like one thing, and then they could get quotes from different vendors. But yeah, you're right. We can work with Kelly, is her name? Just like for the irrigation survey that we had to send out, we worked with her. She had it on the website. She had a little flash on the website, and then plus you could even fill out your irrigation survey on the website.
You keep saying that you have to have a certified backflow
Tester,
prevention
yes.
inspector to do the testing. The manual says that the resident can test their own.
No.
Yes, on page 11. It says residential testing. Residential water customers shall test residential backflow prevention assemblies biannually by using certified backflow prevention assembly tester. It doesn't say you have to have a certified tester.
That's a typo.
So it says that,
Which page?
on page
What?
11. So that means I can go somewhere and buy this tester and test it myself, according to the language.
What,
That's a good
On
catch.
page 11, 6.1.2. Is that not what it says?
Oh, mine's got a strikeout.
but it says by using a certified backflow.
That's
Oh,
still,
by using-
no, that language is still that the residents are responsible to test, and they have to use a certified backflow
using-
prevent assembly tester.
Tested, but tester, not
It
test
said tester. It didn't say test.
No, the tester is the person, is your certified tester.
Yeah, by using a certified backflow prevention assembly tester.
Tester's a person.
Someone who is certified, yeah. It's not a test kit.
It's a little,
Could be
That's
better clearly
debatable.
stated.
No, I mean, that's.
Because when I read it, it means that I can go somewhere and buy a tester and test it myself. It's like a pH tester. You're
It's not,
testing the
though.
water in your fish tank. It's a tester.
Yeah, good luck, good luck. You gotta hook a meter onto those.
I think that needs to be clarified, obviously.
I mean,
Shall.
that's the way I interpreted it, so.
Well, if you can find a certified backflow prevention assembly tester, you're good, because it's a person. You have,
By
it
no,
takes.
by
a-
using a certified backflow prevention assembly
They don't sell
tester.
test kits at Home Depot, do they?
Yeah, it's not it's,
I read it. Okay.
I know what he's saying. It's like, if you can find one of those thingies.
If I, yeah,
yeah.
I may have one.
All right. Any other questions for Paula?
Just one last question, because you just made the comment to Mr. Beckett that a lot of people wouldn't even know that they have one because it's not visible. So even if we sent out surveys to our residents, I would expect that a lot of those surveys results would be mixed at best in terms of their ability to self-identify. So do you have a typical profile of a neighborhood or a home that would definitely have backflow devices on it, and is that your plan of attack?
Well, we do have the old data, I mean, the data that we have now that's in Tokay, and that has a lot of residential information on it. But all of our reclaimed areas have it. They don't get a meter without one. So we already know that that's that. And that's the one that Michael was talking about, the new technology. That's the one where you can use the dual check as opposed to the double check, but that's the only place.
Yeah. So if I walk this through, we wouldn't have passed ordinance 2894 if we didn't feel like cross-connection control program was something of value to our water system. So that's passed. The manual basically, and you kind of hit the nail on the head a little bit earlier, there is an expectation that homeowners test their devices based off the table, based off device type and period of time. If they don't do it, you have an opportunity to warn them, a couple guidance letters. If that doesn't happen, you have the ability to bill them, put it on the water bill. If they want to smooth that cost to have it tested by a certified tester, they can do that over a course of time. Is that what you meant to say? That's how I
now,
interpret it.
if they go private, which is fine, we're not going to be in competition with the private. Matter of fact, we probably end up using private people as our third party. But if I hire you outside and I have to pay you direct, that has nothing to do with putting it on the water bill.
misinterpreted my comments.
I'm sorry.
Not that the city's necessarily doing it ourselves, but we would use a contractor. I think you said that you're looking at a list of ones to have as your
But you
your
could
go-tos.
also go, if you have an uncle that's a plumber that has these testers or something.
Totally, but that would be a situation where the homeowner's doing it themselves and
Oh, okay,
like they're supposed to,
right.
per our manual. But if it gets to the point, like you said before, you send them a letter, they don't do it, 2 weeks later, still don't do it.
Yes.
City still finds value that we need to have it tested. You go out to one of our providers and have it done on their behalf, and then it's billed to them.
Then
is
it-
how
then
I
it's billed to
heard
them.
you earlier.
Yes.
But that bill, let's say it costs $40 or $50,
Right.
whatever the case might be. It's not a one-time hit. They would have the opportunity, if they so choose, if I'm hearing you correctly, to kind of smooth that out over a payment period.
Well, that's my understanding with utility billing. There's options of payment plan.
Yeah. And I just wanted to regurgitate.
Reiterate.
Restate, and that would be a more professional, eloquent way to say that. Restate what you were saying. Okay.
Right.
All right, Commissioner Smith, I just want to clarify one thing on your point. If you refer to paragraph 1.8 of the manual, which are the defined terms, it defines certified backflow prevention assembly tester as a person who is trained by an approved agency in backflow testing and receives a certification. So tester is actually a defined term in the manual.
And where's that at?
1.8, it's page 4 of the manual, page 364 on your agenda, and it's paragraph 1.8. So it's a defined term, so because it's used in multiple places in the manual, and that's the specific definition.
You know, most men don't read all that. They just go and find what they need.
Mayor, Commissioners, let me point out one other thing too, from a utility billing perspective. As Commissioner Becker was stating, you know, we have discretion. Finance, utility billing and finance has discretion on how to spread out payments. So, and I say that only because we've got some people, as you know, as we went through coronavirus or whatever, we had people who were on payment plans. And sometimes what we've done is we've made the payment plans on a case-by-case basis because not everybody, you know, $40 might be better spread 2 months, and somebody may want 3 months, depending on their bill, where they are, what's going on. But we work with each person individually, on a case-by-case basis, to make those payment plans. And we've always done that to help our customers with their bills.
Do we have an idea what these tests cost?
40 to 60.
40 to 60.
And that's going to be, you know, I know a bunch of these testers from working in Orange County too. And they're competitive when, you know, and if an HOA approaches them and says, hey, you won't have to drive all over town, I got 50 right here for you. They're gonna deal.
Yeah, that's what I was asking. You know, that would be best
Yeah.
to do for the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Just the last thing, just to clarify, again, I'd made a statement earlier, that if someone has that issue, they have a break in their house, they have a back siphoning, it can't get back into the main system without it trigger. If there was a break in the main line, this is what you were pointing out, I believe, earlier. If that happens, there's an indication immediately, And these have happened over the city, because I asked the same question, have they happened? You said yes. And every time they do, automatically, everyone has said, you know, boil water alert, here's what happens. But if that doesn't happen, there's no way it can go from my house to my neighbor's house.
No.
So the real question then, is it in the groundwater in both places, and is that, I think that
Well-
was the intimation, and then it has to be each individual testing their groundwater, and I think that groundwater was tested at least twice. You know,
And-
so without getting into another issue there, I mean, that's something
Well,
we
and
can help
because I hadn't
clarify
thought
for
about it
him,
until
but-
she was speaking too, a main break. I mean, usually when a big main is there, the dirt there is not like regular dirt. It's packed and all that kind of stuff. So as far as leaching or getting dirt, you'll get in there, but I don't know that you would get contaminants of the really tiny toxic stuff. And as far as in your house, your yard, your front yard, it's PVC. Nothing's gonna come in that. I wasn't quite following, but yeah, you could lose pressure in the main and possibly have a backslide, possibly.
And
have
if
a
that
backslide
happens,
leach.
then there's an alert sent out to
Yes.
everyone,
Yeah,
boil
the SCADA,
water until it's
yeah.
clarified and tested. But
Right,
if
and
it's
that's
a
boil
break
water.
past the meter, there's no way, because that's pressure, there's no
Yes.
way groundwater can press
Right.
against 40 PSI to push back into a system. So that was my understanding, which helped me understand that. But it can happen to that individual's home, which is why
Yes.
it's good to check this.
Yes,
But then
yeah.
statistically,
Improbable.
it's kind of like helmet laws, you know? I mean, different people say, you can't have zero risk in life. So what is the society mandating? And I think that's what we're wrestling with here. We want safety, and, you know, we've got to do a reasonable thing. So I think that's what we're trying to do.
All right. Okay, come on up, Rogers.
I guess just for clarification, just looking from a layman's person, education is key. However, you can put it to a resident, because it's fairly confusing kind of listen to it all. But if I understand correctly, the city is going to put in a program to require residents to test their backflow meters on a biannual basis.
There you go.
Starting at what point? Is that rolling out January 1st?
I think is it January 1st or February 1st, we have to have it? Yeah. Right.
And is it as simple as, if you have irrigation, you have a backflow preventer?
Everybody except people that only have water into their house.
Right.
Whether you have irrigation, either, you know, from your potable, or whether you have reclaimed, or whether you have well water, all those were required.
If you have irrigation, there has to be.
Period,
yeah.
yes.
So it's that simple. If you have irrigation, you know, that's how we figured it out finally.
All right, Rod Olson, you got
Rod Olson, 3156 Rolling Hills Lane, Apopka. DEP says we have to do it. It's in the interest of the safety of all residents in this city. Why don't we do it, incorporate it into the bill, and just get it done? Why all this Mickey Mouse around? And you know people are going to miss the date. Contract it, get it done, what the timetables are, whether we hire someone or whether we just retain someone. Why don't we do it that way? I mean, it doesn't, we're doing a lot of work for something I think is relatively simple. It's 40, 60 bucks. Hit it and be done, and put it in the water bill. Thank you.
Well, we know Orange County, I know with Paula left there, it's $3 a month for Orange County, and we're pretty sure that's not going to be the number that works. So it could be $3 a month, and we're pretty sure that's not the right number. So is it $4 a month, $5 a month to take care of it? So, I mean, that's the question. We just thought this was this will get us into compliance. I think we've got safeguards in the system, so I think this will work, but.
So it requires the individual, but if they don't do it, it allows us to get it done and then
Exactly.
bill and
Yep,
prorate.
Yep, yep.
Okay.
Okay, all right. Anybody else? If not, look for a motion to adopt Resolution 2021-65.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Smith,
I'll second that.
Seconded by Commissioner Velasquez. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. I think what we will do, though, is we'll get with Paul and like some of our events we have around town is bring out some of the, the backflow preventers, show people, because we could do a better job of marketing the program. So that's something we can do. Farmers market, we could have a table out there. So we can do some things to educate the public. So
And Mayor, I don't think it's going to be so important to show them the backflow preventer because they're not going to be able to see it anyway. I think if you had a diagram, like I know in Rock Spring Ridge, we have two black boxes. And one black box is your water meter, the other black box is your backflow preventer. So if you just had a picture to show them, you got two black boxes in your front yard, one is the meter, the other is the backflow preventer, because they're not going to see that thing. It's under the ground. Right. They're not going to open it.
So if I do the math, check my math on this one though. So let's just say that Apopka has 19,000 households, because I think that's in the ballpark of what we're at. Times that by $40, that's $760,000 a year. Obviously, we're not doing it every year. But let's just say we have that in half. That's 380. Divide that again by the 19,000 households. Divide that by 12 for your monthly contribution, and I get to $1.66 a month.
Right, but that's just a test, and those tests are gonna fail, and then you're gonna have to repair it, and that's a whole other thing.
Right. And
Okay, so
right.
what were you saying with the county? They do
county is
test
$3
and
a
repair?
month, and they take care of everything.
Okay, I got
If
you.
it fails, they fix it.
Then what's
replace it.
the average cost again?
Of repair,
Yeah, right.
probably $50 an hour, I mean, they probably give you an hourly rate, your tester.
So double the cost of the certificate, okay.
Right, and Commissioner,
so
one,
that's-
one of the things to take into account, I think the Orange County model, in Orange County, the county owns the backflow preventers on people's properties. You want to take into account potential liability costs that are going to be incurred by the city if the city is going to be the owner of the item on private property. And those are now additional kind of hidden costs that you need to
Sure,
incorporate.
sure. Mhm.
That is something that the city needs to consider beyond just the cost of owning the item, inspecting the item, maintaining the item. All of those are additional costs that, if it's the city's prerogative, I'm here to serve the council, but those are the issues that are going to come up if you take the approach of the city taking title to the devices on the property.
But to said differently, the simple math for parts and labor would be around the $3 mark, but then you're saying that there's other peripheral costs that need to be considered if you take ownership of a program like that. I get it.
Eventually, you can't repair it anymore, you have to replace it, and they're like $200 right now.
I'm good, I won't believe it.
All right, next up, Resolution 2021.
Did we vote?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Look for a motion to adopt Resolution 2021-65.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Smith?
We already did.
Yeah, we did Smith and
And the good thing about it is,
Velasquez.
it's the same again, I think, so.
Yeah, it was Smith and Velasquez.
Yeah, I think we just need a vote.
And we did vote.
We did
We
vote.
did
We
vote.
can do it
did
again.
vote. Yeah.
Unanimous.
Are we good?
Yep,
All right,
we're
let's
good.
go.
Okay, getting late. All right, Resolution 2021-49.
Resolution 2021-49. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Apopka approving and authorizing the execution of a non-exclusive franchise agreement for commercial solid waste services with Environmental One LLC for roll-off container collection and disposal of waste within the city, providing for an effective date.
So Mayor, I will present this item. Usually this is Josh Robinson in our solid waste, but I'm sure he's home getting plenty of rest so that he can get up bright and early and pick up garbage. So on that note, Resolution 2021-49 authorizes the execution of a non-exclusive franchise agreement with the Commercial Waste Services with Environmental One LLC for roll-off container collection and disposal of waste within the city of Apopka. And just so you know, this looks a little different than the other resolutions that you've seen in the past, but with the help of Michael, we now have an agreement, not only a resolution, but we have an actual agreement, and you'll notice these agreements have already been executed by the franchisee, right? And so There'll be more of these to come to you because going forward in the future, we're actually going to have a written agreement that lays out all the details and everything so that everything's, everybody's on the same page and everybody has an agreement. So this is just renewing their agreement. And you will see more of these in the future as we move through all of our franchisee.
Okay, any questions for Edward? Anybody from the public wish to speak on this matter? Not, we'll close the public hearing, look for a motion to approve resolution number 2021-49.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Bankson,
Second.
second by Commissioner Becker. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries unanimously. Next up, 2021-51.
Resolution 2021-51, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Apopka approving and authorizing the execution of a non-exclusive franchise agreement for commercial solid waste services with the Republic Services of Florida for a roll-off container collection and disposal of waste within the city, providing for an effective date.
Edward?
Again, this is another one, so this again is asking for your approval to authorize the franchise agreement with, for solid waste services with Republic Services of Florida LP for roll-off container collection and disposal of waste within the city of Apopka.
Any questions? Anybody from the public wish to speak on this matter? If not, we'll close the public hearing, look for a motion to approve resolution 2021-51.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Smith,
Second.
second by Commissioner Bankson. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed, motion carries unanimously. Next up, resolution number 2021-66.
Resolution 2021-66, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Apopka, Florida, amending the budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2021, and ending September 30th, 2022, providing for budget amendment.
Vladimir Ortega, Finance Director, City of Apopka. Resolution number 2021-66, amending the budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2021, and ending September 30th, 2022. The first amendment is for the turning lanes for Binion Road for the San John River Water Management Apopka Service Center. And the funding source is for the Transportation Impact Fee Reserve. And it's a construction project change order for turning lanes on Binion Road. This order was approved via City Council meeting held on December 1st, 2021 for $43,048. The second amendment is the Coronavirus State Local Recovery Grant, and the funding source is from the Grant Fund Reserve. And the City of Apopka was awarded a total of $7,037,307 to provide resources to meet pandemic response needs. $3,518,653.50 was received on July 12, 2021, and the funds will be utilized for street resurfacing on Yoder's Road, fire suck systems, and the Kamwiwa septic sewer conversion. And this is for $1,750,000. The third amendment is for the public safety personnel, and the funding source is from the general fund carryover. Grant opportunities that were in process during the fiscal year 22 budget hearings were unfortunately not awarded for the COPS grant and the Assistant to Firefighters grant. These grants were for police and fire personnel. Based on the grant workshop held prior to this council meeting today at 6 p.m., this budget amendment assigns funding from carryover appropriations for the police department personnel and 6 fire departments for the personnel and equipment. So 10 for police and 6 for fire. And the funds is $828,200. And the request for the city council is to adopt a resolution number 2021-66 for a total amendment of $2,621,248.
Okay. Any questions for Vladimir? Anybody from the public wish to speak on this matter? Not, we'll look for motion from the council to approve resolution number 2021-66.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Bankson, second by Commissioner Velasquez. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next up, resolution 2021-67.
Okay. Resolution 2021-67, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Apopka, Florida, calling a special election and a runoff as needed for the purpose of electing the city council member for seat 4, providing for the qualifying period and election dates, authorizing city clerk to proceed with election arrangements, and providing for an effective date. You want me to go down there? Or-
Sure.
Everybody should have there was a couple of Scrivener's errors on the original one that went in the agenda packet. So just very minor, and I gave you all a red line of what we changed. But this is to calling for a special election and a runoff. And just to alert, to allow time so that people can also go under the same qualifying period as we have scheduled for December 27th, starting at noon, and ending on January 4th at noon also. So basically, that's really the gist of the resolution. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions for Susan? Anybody?
Just confirming the 26th of April, not December 15th of 2021.
Yes, the 26th of April.
Was that a Freudian slip? It's not Scribner's error, it was a Freudian slip on your part, huh? I'm
So,
kidding.
Yeah, so, but that's it. Okay.
Any questions? Any other questions? Okay, anybody from the public wish to speak on this matter? Not, we'll close the public hearing, look for a motion to approve Resolution 2021-67.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Becker,
Second.
second by Commissioner Bankson. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries unanimously. Next up, Mayor's Proclamation, City Election, Special Election 2022. Let's see here. Whereas in accordance with the provisions of the Charter and the Code of Ordinances of the City of Apopka, Florida, a special election shall be held on March 8, 2022, to elect a commissioner for seat 4 to fulfill an unexpired term, and whereas City Council seat 4 will become vacant at 12 p.m. on April 26, 2022, it is therefore necessary that a commissioner for City Council seat 4 be elected at a special election of the City of Apopka, Florida, to fulfill the remainder of the unexpired term for Commissioner City Council seat 4. Now therefore, I, Brian Nelson, Mayor of the City of Apopka, Florida, as required by law, do hereby proclaim and pronounce that a special election will be held in the City of Apopka, Florida, on Tuesday, March 8, 2022, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. for the purpose of electing a commissioner for City Council seat 4. Voting precincts will be determined by the Orange County Supervisor of Elections. Early voting will be available through the Orange County Supervisor of Elections Office, 119 West Cayley Street, Orlando, Florida, beginning Monday, February 28, 2022, through Friday, March 4, 2022. Only the voters of the city residing within the city limits who are properly registered within the Orange County Supervisor of Elections or who will be properly registered by February 7, 2022, may vote in this election. Candidates for said office must qualify with the city clerk beginning at 12 p.m. on Monday, December 27th, 2021, at 12 p.m. and ending at 12 p.m. on Tuesday, January 4th, 2022, at City Hall, 120 East Main Street, Apopka, Florida. Voting precincts 9104, Apopka Community Center, VFW, 519 South Central Avenue, Apopka, Florida, and precinct 9204, Southwest Recreational, 3710 Jason Dwelly, Apopka, Florida. In the event it becomes necessary, a runoff election will be held on Tuesday, April 12, 2022, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at Precinct 9104, located at Apopka Community Center, 519 South Central Avenue, Apopka, Florida, and at Precinct 9204, located at Northwest Recreational, 3710 Jason Dwelly, Apopka, Florida. I, Brian Nelson, hereby appoint the canvassing board for said runoff election as follows. Canvassing board, City Commissioners Doug Bankson, City Clerk Susan M. Bone, and City Resident Jim Green. In witness herefore, I have set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Apopka, Florida, to be affixed and attested by the City Clerk of Apopka this 15th day of December, 2021. Brian Nelson, Mayor. Okay, City Council reports. Commissioner Velasquez.
Wow, finally.
Yeah.
She's got a long list.
I do, I have a long list. I actually wrote things down because I said I didn't want to forget anything. First of all, Shop with a Cop has been really well attended, and I just want to thank, the police department for all they do. And I've gotten the opportunity to be there a couple of days, and it was fun. And yesterday was Grinch Day, so it was fun. Of course, Saturday Sounds. We're both loyal to Saturday Sounds. And so this Saturday, just to remind our residents that even though it's Christmas coming in a few days, we still have Saturday Sounds, so please come out and support that. Just want to make a comment regarding the Orlando Philharmonic Christmas show. It was a great success, and it was very well attended. And I've gotten so many compliments about it, and they just keep saying, make sure you bring it back every year. So that's something that we're going to have to budget for every year. And then just wanted to kind of give a shout out to the mayor's wife, Debbie Nelson, because I had an angel tree, a student from a local school, and she had a very expensive and long list, and the mayor's wife stepped up and shared the cost of the bicycle with me. So I want to give her a shout out and say that, it's really, a program that we love. And this year was the first year that they actually send the list of the angels to the city of Apopka. So a big shout out to both our police department and the fire department for picking angels and fulfilling those Christmas wishes to the kids. What else? Oh, the Chamber Awards dinner was a success also. We had a lot of fun with that. And I just want to kind of, the firefighter of the year was Lieutenant Matthew Gargone. The police officer of the year was Quentin Ned. And of course, our Jerry Maynard received the Bernie Roberts Award. And just this week, I saw one of our firefighters, Sean Potter, was promoted to engineer, so congratulations to him. Let me see. I think that's it. Oh, the Apopka Christmas Parade. That was a lot of fun. This year, I was able to bring my granddaughter, and she loved it. She loved the waving, but really, even as I turned the corner, was to see both sides of the streets completely covered with residents from the city of Apopka. So it was a beautiful day, and it was a great parade, so.
Awesome. Thank you.
Good.
Well, for sake of time, I'll have one. Go Blue Darters.
Commissioner Smith.
I'm going to echo Commissioner Vasquez and Commissioner Bankston. Go Blue Darters.
Commissioner Becker.
No, since we won't be meeting before the new year, I just wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and a fantastic new year. And that's it.
All right. Edward.
I do not have anything, Mayor.
Oh, so I was the only one that had this long list?
But
I didn't get put on the list.
But I think, I see that the city attorney's not on there.
There was another, but I mean, I was going to, I think Commissioner Becker stole my thunder, but yes, being this is the last meeting, and wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and being that this is also the last meeting, another year has gone down, so Commissioner Smith, I think I've got 2 years now on the 28 I promised when I came on board, so
all right,
I'm on my way.
Hang in there.
All right. Okay, good. All right. Mayor's report, some of this already been said, so I won't repeat it. We also still have the farmer's market / holiday market at Kitland Nelson Park on this Thursday. So if you have got the last minute shopping, come on down. Wreaths Across America will be Saturday. So if you're not going down to Fort Lauderdale for the game, noon at the Greenwood Edgewood Cemetery. We need some volunteers to help put the wreaths out on our veterans' graves. I was just helping unload it today. Truck, kind of neat, Tyson Food donates time and money toward delivering. So they had a big Tyson food truck with the wreaths full. And so we got them unloaded today, and they'll be out there for Saturday. So come on out. Recapped everything. One thing we didn't recap was the Camp Weewa Open House, real big success. Probably 200-300 people there, to really get a good feel for what we can do out there. And so I think we've got a lot of opportunities there to keep it full on the weekends and hopefully some during the week. Last but not least, matter of fact, the reason I went in the back to take a phone call, this was confirming that I have a parking lot for the game down in Fort Lauderdale. So for those out there listening, the parking lot we have for the Apopka Blue Darters will be 1515 West Commercial Boulevard, Fort Lauderdale. And so come on down. I'll be cooking burgers and dogs, and the proceeds will go toward the Darter Nest, which is the food pantry at Apopka High School. So with that, we'll call it a night.
Oh, yeah.